3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the place you're getting out overly ostentatious studios of CBS Sports Radio here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor of 345 Hudson Street. Welcome in to a massive, super Football Friday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all the great local CBS Sports Radio affiliates, Sirius XM, Channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and of course streaming on YouTube, youtube.com/CBS Sports Radio. 855-212-4CBS number to jump on in, 855-212-4227. You can always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter, at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. Got Moist Mike and also Stuart Kovacs, who's looking more and more like Mike McDaniel by the day. We're rocking and rolling all the way up until 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Matt Schaub's going to stop by 20 minutes from now. Kevin Faulk is going to join us an hour 20 from now. Ryan Horvat's NFL picks coming up at 5:20 p.m. Eastern, 2:20 p.m. Pacific today. But what a crazy week this was. And it's nice that we now have a bookend on the week where it starts with Nick Saban, with him retiring from Alabama. Then the next day, you basically find out that Bill Belichick got fired from New England. And usually when you have two enormous players in their sports either get let go or have a retirement, it's one of those situations where it's a long, crazy head coaching search where you have 9,000 reports and you have these two enormous brands in Alabama with the Crimson Tide and then the New England Patriots, two lucrative brands too. And you get a lot of erroneous BS and crazy reports, and you get your hopes up with one person, and then it ends up being somebody else. And sometimes there's a name that comes out of left field that no one saw coming. Well, it's wild that today is Friday, and we just found out a few days ago about Belichick being donezo in New England, Saban retiring from Alabama, and we already have their replacements. With it being announced today, Jerod Mayo is the new head man in New England. We'll get to that later. But the breaking news is that Kalen DeBoer, friend of show, Kalen DeBoer, who just coached Washington to the national championship game where they lost to the Michigan Wolverines and had Michael Penix Jr. back-to-back years in the Heisman Trophy conversation, and he was just the runner-up for the Heisman Trophy. Well, Kalen DeBoer is finalizing an agreement with the University of Alabama, which is just wild. It is surreal, and it is, as I said yesterday, if this ended up going down, it would be a home run hire. Now, let me just peel back the curtain a little bit. So we know DeBoer. I've had DeBoer on this show since Fresno State. I'm a massive fan of Kalen DeBoer. His story is unbelievable when you look at him being a baseball player and a football player at Sioux Falls. When he was at Sioux Falls, he batted .520. You heard that right. I didn't misspeak. He batted .520 as a senior baseball player at Sioux Falls. He also led the program in receiving yards, receptions, and also receiving touchdowns. Then goes on to coach Sioux Falls. He goes like a crazy 67-3 with 3 NAIA championships. He then gets the job at Fresno State, had a bunch of other stops in between, but not head coaching jobs. You know, he was at Indiana for a little bit with Michael Penix Jr., and he gets to Fresno State 2 years. Last year has 9 wins. That elevates him into the Washington job, taking over for Lake. And it's like, okay, you got to get Washington moving back in the right direction. In the last 2 years, he was 25-3 at Washington, and he just led the Washington Huskies to the national championship game. So when I look at the story of Kalen DeBoer, it is a wild one. It is a crazy one. It is a great one. And it's also a really fun one. And now he goes to the biggest real estate in college football, and he has the biggest spot, and that is the man that is going to replace Nick Saban at Alabama. And I had a feeling that this was going to go down last night because I exchanged a text message or two with Kalen DeBoer, congratulating him on the season. He got back. And then I said, hey, we'd love to have you on the show because his name was being floated around with this Alabama job. And he's like, hey, I'm going to have to decline right now, but maybe we'll talk down the road. So we're looking forward to that next conversation with Kalen DeBoer. And then you see that report, which came out today. He was supposed to go in studio with the local Seattle radio station, KJR, and he had to cancel. And once he had to cancel that interview, it was like, okay, well, one or two things are going to happen. One, he's going to get this ridiculous contract extension from Washington. And when I say ridiculous, that's not with a negative connotation because it would have been well-deserved. Or he's finalizing a deal to become the next Alabama head coach, and it ended up being the latter. Now, when you look at Kalen DeBoer and also him leaving Washington, like if you're a Huskies fan, you may be upset. I get it. You're frustrated because of what this guy just did, but you can't fault him for taking the Alabama job. And also the Jimmy Sexton angle of this, too, is massive because it's not just a coincidence, right? So Dan Lanning, I know some people will say that he never got offered the job. It seemed like Alabama, from my understanding and the way that it's been reported. I know some people have fought back to this. It does seem like Alabama wanted Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning basically stayed at Oregon. He put out the hype video. And then after that, I'm not sold that everyone that reached a new contract or put out a hype video was necessarily in play for the Alabama job. I do believe that Kalen DeBoer was a top 2 candidate in Alabama's eyes for the job. I do firmly believe that. But you got to remember the agent game here, where sometimes, and you even see this in our business too, in radio, where you have the program director, right, who in this case is the athletic director at Alabama, like that's a similarity. And then whoever the agent is that represents all the talent, or in this case represents all the coaches, becomes extremely powerful. Because it could have easily have gone from, all right, Lanning said no, or maybe there was a little smoke with Lanning that it didn't end up being true. They want DeBoer, but it's not as just simple as getting DeBoer the job. When Jimmy Sexton represents a lot of these guys, it's okay. You see Mike Norvell reach a new contract agreement. That's a Jimmy Sexton guy. And then once you had the Lanning social media video go out, anyone's name that was connected to the Alabama job or speculated to the Alabama job, it made so much sense for a guy like Sark, who has Alabama ties, or also Mike Norvell, to put out these videos or put out these tweets and basically go all Jordan Belfort style from the Wolf of Wall Street and announce that they're not leaving. It absolutely makes sense. Whether you were in play for the Alabama job or not, you're catering to your fan base and you're at least giving the front or giving the idea that you're not leaving your job to go take the prime real estate job in the sport in Alabama. So I don't necessarily think Alabama went 0 for 3 before they got to Kalen DeBoer. I would think at best it was 0 for 1 with them, I think, wanting and knowing that they wanted Dan Lanning. But now to go land Kalen DeBoer, this is a sensational hire. And let me talk to the Alabama fan for a second, because I don't know what the overwhelming majority reaction is going to be, but there will be a contingent of Alabama fans, and they have already flooded my mentions on social media, and I've already had a few back and forths with them. There will be a contingent of Alabama fans that say, oh, this guy has no ties to the South. Oh, this guy has no ties to Nick Saban. This guy has no ties to Alabama. He's going to be Brian Harsin, what Brian Harsin was leaving Boise State, going to Auburn. Get lost with that. Seriously, get lost with that. Kalen DeBoer is a phenomenal coach. Kalen DeBoer has been a winner everywhere he has gone. And not only that, this is a new era. Even looking at a coach from a few years ago, it's a totally different ball game with now having an understanding of what the transfer portal looks like and what NIL is. Look what Kalen DeBoer just did at Washington. I'm not saying he's going to go win 6 national championships, but he will have success at Alabama. There's no doubt about that in my mind. Because small job, medium-sized job, big job, and now the biggest job, he's had success everywhere he's gone. Once again, with what he did at Sioux Falls, what he did at Fresno State, and he just got Washington to a national championship game. And who did he beat before he got to the national championship game? Texas. Who did Alabama lose to by 10 points this year? Texas. So why can't this guy go to Alabama and succeed? I absolutely think he can. And the biggest trait that I think Kalen DeBoer has when it pertains to this Alabama job, where he'll survive the initial criticism and the initial people that would just be like, oh, it's not Nick Saban, so this is going to fail. Oh, it's not an Alabama guy. It's not a guy that has ties to the South or Alabama, so this is going to fail. He is one of the more unflappable coaches that I've ever been around. And I think his calm personality, he'll be able to take whatever criticism initially comes his way, and he will also operate every move with a certain flavor that's done on his own terms, but also he'll pay respect. He'll honor the great, legendary, the greatest coach of all time in college football in Nick Saban. So, like Alabama fans, if you are unhappy today, or you're annoyed with the all likelihood that Kalen DeBoer is finalizing a deal right now is going to be your next head coach, who else did you want? Like, who else was the guy? Don't tell me Dabo Swinney. I know Dabo has won championships, but he doesn't adapt to NIL and the transfer portal. You want to tell me Dan Lanning would have been a fine choice? Well, guess what? Kalen DeBoer just beat him twice in one season. Lane Kiffin, I didn't think that was going to be the move. I like Lane Kiffin. I think he's a good coach, but he fits Ole Miss better than Alabama. Sark wasn't leaving Texas for your job. He wasn't. As great as the Alabama job is, when Sark has now Texas rolling, he has his quarterback coming back in Quinn Ewers and has Arch Manning right behind him. He's not leaving, fresh off a college football playoff appearance. So who else did you want? Who else was the name? You got to be realistic here. And when you got in the realistic list of names and the right name and a good name, check, check, check for Kalen DeBoer. I don't understand, outside of just a natural resistance that it's not Nick Saban and that you're down in the dumps and you're all annoyed that Nick Saban elected to walk away and retire at the age of 72 when Nick Saban has won 6 national championships at Alabama. I understand there's disappointment there because you never thought it was going to end when you get wrapped up in all that winning and all that greatness. And yes, we know Kalen DeBoer's not going to go on to win 6 championships, but he can continue to move the Alabama train in the right direction. He can continue to keep them as an elite program in this sport. What he just did the last 2 years at Washington, he has that success at Washington. Why can't he have success with more resources and taking over the biggest and best job in college football? So enough. I hope it's a minority of people. I really do. And maybe I'm just getting caught up in social media. But you got to be open to this. You got to give it a chance. Because this is not a hire that should elicit a response of, oh my goodness gracious, what is Alabama doing? You know, when Auburn hired Brian Harsin, I said it on this radio show. I said that doesn't really make sense. You know, Gus Malzahn, who got fired, that's not an upgrade. And also, this wasn't a top 3 or 4 option for Auburn. But in Alabama's case, the legendary coach is walking away. He's retiring. And when you look at some of the preeminent names in the country, Kalen DeBoer is one of the finest coaches in the country. So this is a good move. This is a good hire. And they'll have to adapt a little bit. There's no question when you become the head coach of Alabama. It's a job like no one else has ever seen, right? So for him, why can't he succeed? And I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to entertain, it's a bad hire. Why? Explain yourself. I'll welcome the conversation, actually. 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. If you're against this hire, I would love to know why. I would love to hear your opinion, actually. And I think probably from 9.9 out of 10 people that will call in that will be against this hire, it will be a bunch of rambling, stuttering, and you'll be fumbling all over your words because down deep, this is a good hire by Alabama. Samter, what do you got to say? It looks like you're itching to get on the air.
Well, so I love the hire. I love Kalen DeBoer. I think that he's great. But if there are people who have questions about it, the reason I can understand some of their concerns is that he basically has 2 years as a head coach in a Power 5
conference
team.
Okay.
He was great both those years. But oftentimes we see when a coach comes into a new program, a lot of the talent is often, and transfer portal is a little bit different.
Yeah.
But a lot of the talent was there from previous coaches and recruiting. So we haven't really seen Kalen DeBoer and a full recruiting class at Washington. And I think when you're talking about Alabama, you're talking about the best of the best.
Washington was in a bad spot when he took over.
Sure, and listen, you know me. I love DeBoer.
Yeah.
I think it's a good hire. I'm just saying, for those people who are questioning it, their questions might just be, listen, 2 years at Washington isn't enough to prove to me, as great as they were at Washington, 2 years at Washington with 2 years at Fresno before that isn't enough to prove that you're ready for the Bama job. Bama is probably the number one job in all of college football, right? Maybe Texas too, Michigan's up there, Ohio State, Georgia's now up there. There's a few of those elite of the elite. And for Bama, to be a Bama coach, you have to show prolonged success at a Power 5 conference or Power 5 team.
They just got to the national championship game.
Yes. Again, like I said,
I know you're not arguing it, but this would be my response.
This is just where people are coming from. And again, Pac-12 is different than Big Ten and SEC. We thought the Pac-12 was great this year. It ended up not being nearly as good as we thought it was.
Oh, Washington did get to a national championship
Washington was very
game.
good.
Oregon was really good.
But Colorado didn't live up to what we thought early on. USC
well,
fell
the Big
off.
Ten only had 2 teams.
Right.
And Ohio State ended up being a fraud.
Obviously, Utah fell off for obvious reasons. So early on, when we thought the Pac-12 was the best conference in the country, they clearly weren't. They were maybe the second or third best, but they weren't the best conference in the country.
I actually don't know who was the best conference because all these conferences kind of just spit up on one another.
Yeah.
Just when you thought Georgia was the team, Georgia loses to Alabama. Oh, Ohio State, Penn State, they're going to be good. They end up losing both by Michigan because Michigan was the best team in the country. So the only thing I'll say to that, and I know we got to take a break because Matt Schaub's going to join us coming up momentarily, and I know I'm going to bring up 2 of the greatest coaches ever in college football. But what was the great job that Urban Meyer had before he got Florida, and what were the ties that he had to Florida? And it's like for Nick Saban, he was at Michigan State before he got the LSU job. Really no connections to the South. Both of those guys found a way to make it work. So why can't Kalen DeBoer, who just got to Washington for 2 years, got to a national championship game, lost to Michigan, and now he gets the big boy job of Alabama. All right, it is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. We will take a timeout. When we come on back, Texans back in the playoffs. C.J. Stroud, sensational. We'll hook up with former NFL quarterback for the Houston Texans, Matt Schaub, who will join us in 5 minutes.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Now back to the Zach Gelb Show.
You can stream the NFL on Westwood One for free, sponsored by AutoZone all season long. You can listen to every Westwood One broadcast of the NFL live on the NFL app by asking Alexa to open Westwood One Sports, or on the Odyssey app. Get in the zone, AutoZone. AutoZone's free battery testing and charging is available for free at your local AutoZone. Get in the zone, AutoZone. Restrictions apply. Pete Thamel has it. Kalen DeBoer has informed Washington officials he's taking the job at Alabama. He's expected to tell his team soon. So he was finalizing the contract. To no surprise, he is off to Alabama, leaving Washington after 2 seasons. We do have Wild Card Weekend, and a big matchup kicks things off on Saturday. The Cleveland Browns at the Houston Texans. And now joining us is former Texans quarterback Matt Schaub, kind enough to join us on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Matt, appreciate the time as always. How you been, my friend?
Good, Zach. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. So how about this year for the Texans with DeMeco Ryans, someone you know, getting the head coaching job, then making those 2 picks at 2 and 3 with C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson? No one saw playoffs coming when the season started, but this has been one miraculous turnaround.
Yeah, it really is. Couldn't be more happy for DeMeco and the job he's done. The writing was on the wall as a player that if he wanted to get into coaching, that he was going to be successful and rise the ranks fairly quickly. And the most impressive thing, honestly, is the development of C.J. Stroud. I mean, the maturity that he shows, the ability to throw under duress, and his mechanics, and being able to see the field and not limit his mistakes. It's just been very impressive to watch. You know, we played them. I was with the Atlanta Falcons this season on their staff, and we played them earlier in the season. But you could just see that the kid just plays, above his level, as a rookie. And it's just been impressive to watch.
You need a special person, and you need to have a special personality to change that franchise around so quickly. That's the other thing. It's like the leadership skills that he has to walk into that locker room with grown men and really be their leader, not just because you're the quarterback, but you're the actual leader of the team. It really is impressive from afar.
It is. You listen to how he talks and how he handles himself, in front of the media, and just the way he plays, the calm demeanor, doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. And he just goes about his business. He's played in a ton of big football games going back to his days at Ohio State. But obviously this stage is a lot bigger. But, he's grounded in his beliefs and how he plays. And it just shows, and it's just impressive to watch.
Now, on the other side, Matt Schaub, how about Joe Flacco? Right off the couch, and then he has the Cleveland Browns in the postseason. And not only does he get them to the postseason, some may say elite Joe Flacco is back. This has just been surreal to see what he's been able to do.
Yeah, it's been awesome to see that from Joe. I had spent some time on the Baltimore Ravens roster with him and just played him a bunch of times. He's always been super talented and can throw the ball. It really jumps off his hands. And he's just, again, he's another calm, just cool and collected character. But for him to go into Cleveland with that defense, their running game, their weapons, and just go out and function right off the couch in a new system that he didn't know really anything about, just couldn't be happier for Joe and him getting that opportunity to revitalize his career, because that's always been there. You go back to his Super Bowl run in the playoff run that he had. There's no reason to think he can't do that again.
And you also look at it from a coaching angle. We talked about DeMeco Ryans, Matt Schaub, who joins us right now on CBS Sports Radio. Kevin Stefanski already won one Coach of the Year. He may have another one coming at the end of this season. I think the conversation is DeMeco or Kevin Stefanski, but this. It's tough to keep on winning when your entire roster basically gets gutted with injuries. You've seen it. They lose their quarterback. They lose Nick Chubb. They lost both tackles this season, and to keep on finding a way to get this Browns team to the playoffs, I can't say enough about the coaching job of Kevin Stefanski.
Absolutely. We all know that, the war of attrition is the number one thing in the NFL that you got to battle when you talk about a 17-game schedule. And to be able to weather that storm and have players on your roster that you develop, some of that's behind the scenes, but those guys are able to step in and be productive and to make the decision to, call Joe and, have him come in because the situation they were in at quarterback, which way do we go? We know our roster is built to make the playoffs, and to go and find him and be able to develop him and get him ready within weeks. It just shows the coaching job that he's done and his staff to just get the next man up ready to go and ready to form.
So what do you think this game comes down to between the Browns and the Texans? What ultimately decides it, in your opinion?
Well, I think it comes down, like all games, really. Turnovers, being able to protect the football and score in the red zone. If you can do those two things, I like whoever wins those battles. But, it's going to be fun to watch. I think the defenses will play well. Who can get after the quarterback and affect the other guy and make them make a decision that maybe they don't want to make or hurry them. And I think that's going to be what it comes down to.
Does experience matter in this game? Like for the Texans, they have such a young roster, right? Will Anderson Jr., he's been in big games at Alabama, but not an NFL playoff game because it's his first year. Same with C.J. Stroud. DeMeco Ryans has coached in big games, but never as a head coach. Like, how much is the experience factor a player in this one on Saturday?
Sometimes ignorance is bliss. Sometimes when you don't know any better and you just go out and you throw all caution to the wind and you just play your game and understand that once you get between the white lines or put the headset on, it's a football game. Obviously the stakes are a little bit higher and that, but it helps you to just have some tunnel vision. And sometimes those things can help you. Sometimes it can be used as a crutch when things don't go your way. But, I think you can't underestimate also Joe's experience as a quarterback in the playoff situations and understanding, okay, I don't need to force a ball here. I can throw it away. We can punt, let our defense go out there. So I think there's reasons to argue for both sides. Obviously experience does help, but also sometimes inexperience, isn't a bad thing.
Wrap it up with Matt Schaub, who joins us right now. Later tomorrow evening, it's supposed to be like frigid cold temperatures, record cold temperatures in Kansas City. I'm sure you played in a cold game or two. I know you were in a dome for a while, but you look at Miami and Kansas City from an offensive perspective. How do you think that weather is going to impact the game for both of these teams?
I think it's definitely going to impact. I think it's going to, and also depending on, what's the wind doing, is it strong? It's going to affect the passing game. But it's going to come down to defense. And you look at Kansas City's defense this year and how they've played and how they've gotten after opposing teams' quarterbacks. I think that's going to be the key aspect to this game. Kansas City's fairly used to playing in this environment in the cold weather. They'll be at home. We'll see how Miami handles it with their scheme. Obviously, they do like to run the ball in a quick passing game and then take their shots when they're there. But I think Kansas City's defense is going to be the key factor in this one.
So, Matt, as you mentioned, wrap it up with Matt Schaub. You were an offensive analyst this past year on the Atlanta Falcons staff. Just how do you kind of look back at the experience? I know you guys didn't accomplish what you set out to achieve this year, but how do you kind of look back at that experience?
Yeah, it was a great opportunity for me to get back in the game and use some of the knowledge that I've accumulated over my playing career and just be part of a great staff and a great team. And Unfortunately, it didn't work out how we wanted to. But, for me, just the game management aspect, some of the situational football things that come up, being able to study those things and lend a hand where I could was very, very valuable to me and what I'm possibly going to do as I go forward.
Yeah, what do you hope to keep on doing with the coaching career? Just wondering. I know you're not still on the Falcons staff, but what's the dream for one Matt Schaub when you look at the rest of the coaching career?
Well, I definitely want to stay connected to the game in some form or fashion. We'll see what happens right now, just getting back, enjoying some family time. But we'll see how things shake up here over the next few weeks or month.
Yeah, and there's a big rumor in Atlanta that Bill Belichick could potentially be their next head coach. I'm sure you've seen that. We'll see how it plays out. What would your reaction be knowing the guys in that locker room if the hoodie finds his way to the ATL?
I think, you look at the results that he's put up over the last 2 decades, 3 decades as a head coach. I mean, it's hard to argue with that and what he's been able to do putting football teams together. But I think anyone that has a head coaching vacancy, those rumors are probably spreading throughout those cities that, he might be going to their staff. So we'll see how time will tell. We'll see what happens.
Last thing I'll ask you, I know they don't play until Monday, but the Eagles look like they have a team chemistry problem right now. Jalen Hurts is also dealing with the finger injury, and I was reading he hasn't even been able to throw the football yet this week, but he's still expected to play in the game. Does it feel like this is just the wrong storm for Philadelphia, and Tampa Bay at home has a good opportunity to take them down on Monday?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely been an interesting past month and a half for the Eagles when you really watch them from the outside. Obviously I can't speak to anything that's been going on inside the locker room or in the building, but you can tell that something's just off and they're not clicking and things aren't happening for them that in the past few years has been happening. And, so their defense is still solid up front on the defensive line. They can still cause problems, and they're tough to block, and they can still run the football. So, we'll see on Monday night. And Tampa, they've had their ups and downs as well, and we'll see what happens when they kick off. But, one thing Tampa's been able to do is run the football as of late over the last few weeks. And, we'll see Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. They're always tough to handle on the outside. So we'll see how it pans out. They definitely, you can tell the Eagles had some things that they need to address and identify over the last couple of weeks before they make a run in the playoffs.
He's Matt Schaub. Matt, always appreciate the time. Thanks so much for doing this. You be well. Enjoy the weekend.
All right, Zach. Thanks a lot.
There you go. Matt Schaub joining us right here on CBS Sports Radio. We will take a break. Clearly crazy news today. Kalen DeBoer off to Alabama. Jerod Mayo replaces Bill Belichick in New England. But we come on back. Let's continue the super conversation about Wild Card Weekend and who has more pressure on them. Is it Dak Prescott or Tua Tagovailoa this weekend with the Dolphins going to frigid Kansas City and the drama Dallas choking Cowboys trying not to be the drama Dallas choking Cowboys this weekend, welcoming in the Green Bay Packers. Update time first. Here's the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
Well, Kalen DeBoer is about to find out what it's like to succeed a legend. The Washington coach is heading to Alabama to take their head coaching job after Nick Saban retired earlier this week. He'll tell his team in another hour about the decision. DeBoer 104-12 in his career as a head man and went 25-3 the last 2 years at Washington. Mike Norvell gets an 8-year extension worth over $80 million to stay at Florida State, while former Alabama assistant Steve Sarkisian is also sticking around at Texas. It's a tough day for Washington. Not only they lose their coach, but Rome Odunze and Dylan Johnson are also entering the NFL draft. There have been 8 coaching changes in the NFL so far, but one of those openings has been filled with the Patriots naming defensive coordinator Jerod Mayo their new head coach, replacing the legendary Bill Belichick. He is certainly well-versed in the Patriot way, having played for the team for 8 seasons and has been part of their coaching staff since 2019. The Commanders will reportedly name Niners assistant GM Adam Peters as their new general manager, while the Braves have given their GM Alex Anthopoulos an extension through 2031. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Hey, this is JR. Let's hang out weeknights here on CBS Sports Radio for my show, The JR Sport Brief, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Zach Gelb Show is on the air across the nation on CBS Sports Radio.
The drama Dallas choking Cowboys. Welcome back. I missed you. I would not be lambasting the Dallas Cowboys today. I would not be chastising the Cowboys if they would have just had a pulse in the game. But that body was dead early in that contest. And then you had to sit at your funeral, and it was a slow, long eulogy and a slow, long funeral the entire day.
Here's Zach Gelb.
It's time to Ask the Pros, where you, the listener, get to ask us a question, and it's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Simply tweet your question at CBS Sports Radio or at Zach Gelb, Z-A-C-H-G-E-L-B, using the hashtag Ask the Pros. Be listening later in the show when we might answer your question. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. So, the news is that Kalen DeBoer is off to Alabama. He is informing his team of that decision as we speak, as we've opened up the show and talked about that through the first 20 minutes and just had Matt Schaub on. Kevin Faulk's going to join us, the former Patriot, at 4:20 p.m. Eastern. He played for Bill Belichick, has also played alongside Jerod Mayo as well. So we'll get his thoughts on all the changes at one Patriot place. But now for the future of Washington real quickly, just to give you this Pete Thamel report, Washington will be an attractive job. Officials there for now won't have any college market competition. Quick list, no order: Lance Leipold, Jed Fish, Matt Campbell, Ryan Grubb, Barry Odom, Chris Kleiman, Kyle Whittingham, Dave Clawson, and Kalani Sitake. When I look at that list, Leipold would be a phenomenal coach. And, you know, he's done a really good job at Kansas. It'd be a phenomenal hire. But you could get pretty much any picking of a job that you want with what you've done so far. I don't think you're leaving Kansas to go to Washington, even though Washington now is moving into the Big Ten, so maybe that plays a factor as well. Like, what I'm saying is Washington is a better job than Kansas, but I think he could get a bigger job if he wanted to leave.
That's interesting, because when you first started saying that, it sounded to me like you were saying that Washington wasn't or that Leipold wasn't good enough for Washington. I'm thinking to myself, like, that would be a home run hire for the Huskies.
It would be a home run hire.
But now that I hear your other way, that's so interesting to hear that you think, and you might be right, because he's been crushing it wherever he goes, whereas Buffalo and then Kansas. He's been great everywhere he goes. He's a guy who I think Washington would be a great fit for him. But if you think that, like, a bigger program, I don't know if it's like an A&M down the road or...
Well, they just made the move for Elko.
Right, but, or Miami. But I don't know what's necessarily a bigger program than Washington right now.
Put it this way.
Especially with the move to the Big Ten.
Well, put it this way. The last two hiring cycles, there have been big jobs available. He has not left yet. So if he didn't leave for some of those other jobs, even like Washington's a good job. Wouldn't call it a great job, but it's a good job. If he didn't leave for those other jobs, I don't think he's leaving for Washington. Now, Jed Fish, who we just had on last week, is a fascinating name, and he's done a sensational job in 3 years at Arizona. Maybe he wants to make that jump to the Big Ten, but Arizona has a really good team. They got a lot of guys that return this year. People are talking about them in a 12-team format going to the college football playoff. I don't think Jed Fish is leaving. You know, Matt Campbell, I know he did a good job this year. The ship for Matt Campbell, for me, has sailed, because I just still can't get over the year he was expected to win the Big 12 and they didn't, where he gets in front of the camera and he goes, "Oh, that was a goal you guys had. My goal was just to be better." Like, that rubbed me the wrong way. Ryan Grubb, who's on the staff, right, with Washington right now, that could make sense. Barry Odom. Chris Kleiman would be good, who's done a really good job at Kansas State. I don't think Whittingham is leaving. You know, Kyle Whittingham, it seems like he's had many opportunities to leave and he hasn't left yet, so I'd be surprised. All right, you throw out Dave Clawson. You know what? Name my circle right there, Kalani Sitake. That last one, who has done a really good job at BYU, has interviewed at other jobs before. It would not surprise me if it ends up being Kalani Sitake. But not that I'm that familiar with this person, but Tracy Ford is reporting, who's got like 20,000 followers on Twitter. He works for Go Forward Sports. He says sources are saying that Cliff Kingsbury could be the Washington football next head coach. Now, that would be something. Cliff Kingsbury winding up at Washington. I can't say that would be a bad hire. I know he was not good he had good starts and bad finishes in the NFL. But when you're talking about Cliff Kingsbury's next head coaching job, it ain't going to be in the NFL. So if he wants to be a head coach again, maybe he elects to go back into the college landscape to be that next head coach. I think he was on the USC staff this year in some capacity. Yeah, he was at USC this year as senior offensive analyst and quarterback coach. So you want a young guy. Cliff Kingsbury is only 44 years old, turns 45 in August. Maybe Cliff Kingsbury is in play. But that's a solid job, Washington. It's a good job. So there's going to be interest there. But it's just wild how this happens this late in the process, because we thought pretty much that the only coaching news was going to be what's going to happen with Jim Harbaugh, because this cycle has already hit the ground running and it already, we thought, did come full circle because of now at the transfer portal, the early signing date, everything gets shifted up that you got to move quickly. And that's why a lot of these programs now, they'll fire a coach in season so they can get a jump start and do their due diligence behind the scenes. So once the season ends, boom, they could quickly go move and they could go quickly hire a coach, right? You saw what happened at Michigan State. They ended up getting Jonathan Smith. We know A&M ended up getting Elko. And then you have this Alabama job where it surprisingly just opens up because Nick Saban retires. And even though people thought that there was a chance Saban could retire in the immediate future, not a lot of people thought it was going to happen. I know everyone will come back now in the last 24 hours because they pretend to be a bunch of know-it-alls and they'll be like, I heard rumblings of this. I knew that this was going to happen. Please. There was not a story before the Alabama game that I saw, Alabama-Michigan, that said this is going to be Nick Saban's final game. I didn't see that story. So Alabama opens up and it creates a domino effect because of how prestigious and how elite that piece of real estate is, where now you have 2 out of the 4 coaches for now in the college football playoff, and DeBoer leave Washington, Saban leave Alabama, DeBoer goes to Washington, Saban goes to retirement. We'll still have an office and still be associated with the Alabama football program in some capacity. And there's a good chance that Harbaugh leaves. And that's something to watch. I think tomorrow they have their parade, their championship parade. It's at 4 p.m. Eastern. The 2 things that I think are fascinating to watch of that parade: does either Harbaugh or J.J. McCarthy play to the crowd? Because I think if one of them was going to make an announcement, I'm coming back for one more year, yeah, it's going to be J.J. McCarthy. I think there's a chance and a good chance that McCarthy comes back. For Harbaugh, it would he already has the offer on the table from Michigan. That 10-year, $120, $125 million contract. So are you going to take your name out of the NFL job and out of the NFL market? I would be surprised if tomorrow we hear from Harbaugh saying, I'm coming back next year. But if you are McCarthy and you are planning to come back, and maybe you want to see how the Harbaugh cycle does play out, but I got to think that Sherrone Moore is going to be the guy that replaces Harbaugh if he leaves. But maybe McCarthy would want to see who's going to be the next head coach at Michigan for sure, because it's all nice of us to say that it should be Moore's job. When you have a job like Michigan open up, you have to have a wide search, I would imagine. But that's something I'll monitor tomorrow at the Michigan parade, right when the NFL playoffs kick off, if we get a super-duper announcement from one J.J. McCarthy that he's coming back. But it'd be pretty neat if Harbaugh did so as well tomorrow.
And you mentioned that the talk is that it's Sherrone Moore's job if Harbaugh were to leave.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Lance Leipold.
Leipold, yeah.
Leipold. Eli Drinkwitz. Maybe a Jed Fish if Washington doesn't work out. There's a lot of names, and Jed Fish has Michigan ties. So, if you're Michigan, do you really have to tie yourself? It kind of would feel similar to the Patriots and Jerod Mayo.
Okay.
Where there's a succession plan in place, but we heard from Christian Fourier yesterday, who was pretty adamant that Vrabel was the guy over Mayo, or should have been. Should be the guy over Mayo. And so I wonder if you're Michigan, if having Sherrone Moore as your succession plan is kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit. See what else is out there. There's some big names available.
I think you do your search, but also I think the name that you can't overlook as well is Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator. He was a rock star, but when you look at Sherrone Moore, the guy I know that Harbaugh was coaching throughout the week, but Moore was still the coach on game day when they beat Penn State, when they beat Maryland, and when they ended up beating Ohio State. And I think that carries a lot of weight. And also, I think this is not that this is the end-all be-all, but how the portal will open back up for the Michigan players once they lose their coach, as it has for Alabama. I don't think anyone in that program, out of the guys that would want to stay, that are on the program and back next year, are then going to say, I'm jumping in the transfer portal because Moore is the coach. So I got to think, I agree with you that you go through your process, and I don't think you just have to hire within to hire within. Like, we've seen, right, Coach K, Roy Williams retired, they hired within, they hired their guys, Duke and UNC guys. Villanova, Jay Wright retires, they hired a Villanova guy who was at Fordham for a year in Kyle Neptune. You don't have to do that. That's also what makes the Saban departure rather fascinating. With all these legendary names that have walked away, this is the first replacement that isn't a Saban guy, doesn't have ties to the school, doesn't have ties to the recruiting region, and I'm for it. So I think there's good and there's bad when you do that, but I just believe that Sharon Moore would be the right person for the Michigan job. But first, let's see if Harbaugh is definitely leaving. And I do lean that he's more leaving than not. But right now, Harbaugh could be the king of college football. Just won a national championship, right? He is polarizing, even though I love him as a coach, but some people can't stand his guts. Saban's now out. You could have a fight between Kirby Smart in the SEC and Jim Harbaugh in the Big Ten, fighting it out to be the face of college football, for the foreseeable future. I don't know if that's important to him, but it is his alma mater at Michigan. All righty, real quickly, who has more pressure on them to win this weekend, Dak or Tua? I think it's easily Dak. No one is picking the Dolphins to win this game outside of me. I think the Dolphins are beating Kansas City 20-17 in frigid Kansas City. But the drama Dallas choking Cowboys have a chance to get to an NFC title game. They have a chance to get to a Super Bowl this year. Now, no one expects the 49ers to go down in the NFC, but we've seen crazier things happen. Dak and the Cowboys as the 2 seed, they lose to the 7 seed Green Bay Packers at home this weekend. I can tell you what our lead will be on Monday. You won't even know that we have an Eagles-Buccaneers game. It will probably be 3 hours of Cowboys, and more Cowboys. Now, I don't think the Cowboys are going to lose, but there is an enormous amount of pressure on Dak Prescott this weekend to get the job done. All righty, we'll take a break here on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. When we come on back, as you know, DeBoer replacing Saban at Alabama. Now we know the replacement for Bill Belichick in New England. It is Jerod Mayo. I'll give you my reaction to that. Plus, former Patriots running back Kevin Faulk going to stop by at 4:20 p.m. Eastern, 2:20 p.m. Pacific. It is 1:20 p.m. Pacific. It is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All righty, rocking and rolling, moving and grooving. It is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on CBS Sports Radio. Quick hour number one. Now we advance to hour number two. Kevin Faulk, former Patriot running back, going to stop by 20 minutes from now. And we got some crazy sports news to discuss, as we've been talking about for pretty much the duration of the first hour. Kalen DeBoer, goodbye Washington, hello Alabama. And then when we get into the NFL world, it is wild card weekend. And the Patriots made the quickest coaching decision ever. Moving on from Bill Belichick, he honored Bill for a day. And then early this morning, bam, here's the news. Jerod Mayo is the next head coach of the New England Patriots. He was drafted by the Patriots, only played in the NFL for the Patriots, and has been coaching the last 5 or 6 years only for the Patriots. And I'll take you back to last year where there was a lot of speculation that the Carolina Panthers wanted to hire him, and he declined to interview with the Carolina Panthers and then had this new agreement with the Patriots. Little did we know from some of the reporting, they had a succession plan in his contract. Whenever Belichick was going to go, I guess they set it up where Jerod Mayo was the plan to take over. Now, I'm sure there's a way in a litigious matter to get out of that agreement. and I'm not going to pretend to know, but I'm sure that there's a way. It feels like there's always a way when it comes to legal circles, and I'm sure that there was language in the contract that ultimately allowed the Patriots to make that decision. But like Samter kind of said, like, let's assume Jim Harbaugh leaves Michigan. Everyone believes that Jerome Moore is going to be the next coach, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't cast a search and that you shouldn't explore other options. And I like the Jerod Mayo hire. I'm not going to tell you, though, that I love the Jerod Mayo hire because I don't think he was the best available name out there that also would have been realistic. I don't think the Patriots were getting Jim Harbaugh. The Patriots aren't having a reunion with Pete Carroll. We knew that wasn't going down. They were looking for a coach who was going to be their next coach for the foreseeable future, for the next decade plus. And I know that it's very unlikely when you make that hire, especially when you just had a coach for 24 years, that the next coach is going to last a decade. But the name that I wanted, the number one option for me, was Mike Vrabel. And I thought that there was already conversations behind the scenes. Heck, it felt like Vrabel wanted to get fired in Tennessee, does get fired in Tennessee. Everyone's shocked. We know that back in October, he was sitting right next to Robert Kraft while he was still the coach of Tennessee, getting honored by the Patriots, going into the Patriot Hall of Fame. And he stayed the entire game and sat right next to Robert Kraft. So I thought there was already a conversation. I did think that there was an assumption that Mike Vrabel was going to be in the running for the job. But I guess because of this clause in the contract, now the job does go to Jerod Mayo. So the way I look at this Mayo move is I think it's a good move more than a bad move. But with how many times we see young defensive-minded coaches or offensive-minded coaches that have never been head coaches before, there's always a gambling game. And it's always like, oh, what we're doing right now, the conversation that we're going to have is it's going to turn into a guessing game of people guessing that he's going to be a good coach, end up being right, or people guessing that he's going to be a bad coach, they end up being right. Like, it's 50-50 for this to have success. Ultimately, Jerod Mayo already has the respect of the locker room. Does that matter to me? Really, no, because there's no untouchable player right now on the Patriot roster. Like, I like Christian Gonzalez, but he got hurt this year. I think he's going to be a great young player in this league. He was just a rookie, and you were seeing some of the success early on in his career. Matthew Judon's a very good player, but he's not a spring chicken. On offense, there's no one that I look at that say I have to have back on this team for next season. And defensively, at least what this allows them to do, because credit Bill Belichick for this, that Patriot defense played their ass off this year. And that was the strength of the team. And that was on a 4-win team. You usually don't have good areas of a team. That defense was a really good area of the team. So even though Jerod Mayo wasn't calling the plays on game day, he was devising the game plans with Bill Belichick. He had a lot of clout in that locker room. He had a very important role. So I would have to think that there's not going to be a major drop-off on the defensive side of the ball. But now it's who's going to be your offensive coordinator? What are you going to do with the 3rd overall pick? They hired a coach first, so you're going to pair him with the GM. You know, is this a GM that has Patriot ties? Is this a GM from outside the organization that has no Patriot ties? Is Jerod Mayo going to report to Robert Kraft? And then is the GM going to report to Robert Kraft? So there's still some things that need to be ironed out. And also, what are the Pats going to do with the 3rd overall pick? So this is not a move that gets made today. And then all of a sudden you say, yeah, the Patriots are going to go to the playoffs next year. Or the Patriots are in this great spot. They got to go through the rebuild, and they can't cut corners, and they got to rebuild the right way. And under Bill Belichick, they were not going to be able to build and rebuild the right way. Like, there was an expiration date, and it was longer than anyone could have expected, and it was as great could be in New England for Bill Belichick, but it was time to move on. It was right to move on. But now you're going to Jerod Mayo, who's a disciple of Bill Belichick, and let's just have the honest conversation. And there's no one that loves Bill Belichick more than me outside of his family and Bears Nigerian. When you look at Bill Belichick disciples, most of them usually end up being really bad in the NFL. You know, the only ones that had somewhat success, and I don't consider Vrabel a disciple because he didn't coach under Bill. He just played under Bill. You know, Brian Flores had some success. You know, he was viewed positive in Miami. You know, Brian Daboll won Coach of the Year last year, but this year was not good. And Bill O'Brien, I know the end of his tenure in Houston was messy, but they were consistently in the playoffs for a good stretch. But other than that, there's been guys like Matt Patricia, Charlie Weiss, like there has been Josh McDaniels, yikes. There has been some really bad assistants under Belichick when they get head coaching jobs where it's just terrible. But why I like this hire is, yes, Jerod will have some of the old ways of the Patriots, but it will be in a new era and it will be in a new wave of 2024 because the coaching position now in both college and the NFL, it's drastically different than it's ever been before. Like Bill Belichick could walk into any locker room and have success, in my opinion, and he could do this my way or the highway type of approach because you have the clout, you have the title of being the GOAT, and you have the 6 rings. But I always say this about the Patriot assistants that walk in and say it's my way or the highway. You don't have the rings as a head coach. You don't. So you need to alter, you need to change, you need to adapt. And now, generally, the my way or the highway type of coach isn't going to work. Like, look at Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell's intense. Dan Campbell is aggressive. But Dan Campbell is a player's coach. And there's a fine line in being a player's coach and then also being a player's coach that's a doormat. Because if you're a doormat and you're a player's coach, I don't want you as my head coach. Now, with that being said, Dan Campbell's not a doormat. You look at someone like Antonio Pierce, player's coach with the Raiders. And I saw Max Crosby today advocating once again for the Raiders to hire Antonio Pierce. That team, even though they like Antonio Pierce and he is a player-friendly coach, he's not a doormat. They respect him. You look at a guy like Nick Sirianni, he's a player's coach, but he's a doormat. And even though Sirianni's had success 3 straight years in the playoffs to go to the Super Bowl last year, they have had an enormous amount of chemistry problems this year in that locker room. But for Jerod Mayo, I don't think he'll be a doormat. I don't. And this guy, and I remember him when he played, actively watching the Patriots and rooting for the Patriots, we always said this about Jerod Mayo. He is an extension of the coaching staff on the field. He is a guy that is a player, but he acts like a coach, and he feels like a coach. So behind the scenes, they obviously saw enough to put this clause in his contract. Yes, I still would have preferred Mike Vrabel. I would have been doing backflips. I would have been doing somersaults in the street if Mike Vrabel was the coach. But with this agreement in place that they had with Jerod Mayo, without knowing it entirety, but just the way that it was reported, they had a succession clause built in Jerod Mayo's last contract. Even if you have complaints about it, well, if they said they'll do this, then you got to kind of follow through and honor it. And it's not a bad hire. It makes sense. But with all that being said, there's still a lot for him to prove. And ultimately, like with most coaches, you're only going to be as good as the players that you get. And the Patriots have a total identity crisis right now where they don't have really any players on the roster right now that if a team called you about that player or if their contract was up, that you have to bring back. There's not an untouchable player on that roster. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the whole Jerod Mayo situation. And Santer, here's the other part that I'll ask you. And I don't know where you lie on this one. So it comes out today that there was a succession plan in place in Jerod Mayo's contract, which it's funny how that information comes out today when they name him the head coach. So someone leaked that information. But when the last 2 months, when it was pretty clear that it was picking up steam that Belichick wouldn't be brought back, like Mayo's name was mentioned, but no one talked about this. This clause in the contract was not made public. So I'm just wondering, did Belichick know about this? Like, did Belichick, when he woke up today, and he had to know yesterday that Mayo was going to be the guy out there announcing it today. But what I'm saying is, did Belichick know, depending on what the actuality of this clause is, but the way it's reported is there was a succession clause in Mayo's contract. Do you think Belichick knew that clause was in place?
I would imagine so. I mean, Belichick was in charge. I mean, outside of Robert Kraft, Belichick
Well, that's what
had
I'm
his hands
saying.
in literally everything to do with that organization.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
He was the president. He was the GM. He was the coach. He was everything.
I understand that, but when you're talking about replacing Bill and the sensitivity to that topic and how close Belichick and Mayo were, and Bill still wanted to coach this team, and that's why these meetings went as long as they did until Robert Kraft and Jonathan Kraft just said, hey, this is not going to work. Let's work to make this appear like it's amicably, even though I think behind the scenes it wasn't as amicable as the way that they tried to make it at the podium yesterday. I do wonder when they brought Jerod Mayo back if maybe this was a deal that was hammered out and ironed out with Robert Kraft and Jonathan Kraft and kind of kept Bill in the dark a little bit, where Bill was like, yeah, I'd love to have Jerod still on the staff. And then they just kind of said, hush, hush, wink, wink, we'll put this clause in your contract. And I also read that this is not the first time this clause has been put in someone's contract. It was put in Josh McDaniels' contract, when you remember the whole situation where he left the Colts at the altar. And ultimately, Josh McDaniels got an offer and a head coaching job somewhere else, and now it's totally different with Josh McDaniels. That's another thing. Who's the OC for Jerod Mayo? I saw Josh McDaniels was at the press conference for Bill Belichick yesterday. He's been around the facility recently. I would imagine wherever Bill lands next, he takes Josh McDaniels with him. But I'll be fascinated to see, and this will be, and I actually do not think, even though Josh McDaniels is a good offensive coordinator, he's just a bad head coach, I don't think Jerod Mayo should bring Josh McDaniels as his OC. I think you let Josh McDaniels go to Bill, and you put your own flavor and your own spin, and you kind of start to shape this how you want the offense to look, and you hire someone that you're close with that's a young, upcoming mind in the game of football. So we're going to see how this works out in New England, but I did not think they would be the first job that was filled. Put it that way. I thought that they would go through a search, but little do we know with this clause in the contract. I wanted Vrabel, but when you have this clause in the contract, I guess it excluded them from the Mike Vrabel sweepstakes.
So then now that Vrabel is still a free agent.
Where does Vrabel go?
Where does Vrabel go? And we discussed this the other day. I mean, people in Ohio State, people at Columbus are clamoring to get rid of Ryan Day and bring Mike Vrabel in. He's a legend with the Buckeyes. I mean, does Vrabel head to college?
I don't think when you're a successful NFL head coach with now name, image, and likeness in the transfer portal and the lifestyle in college that you're looking to go back to college. Ohio State would be foolish, though, to not give him a call right now. And maybe they luck into it where Vrabel doesn't get a job this cycle. And I think he would, but let's say he doesn't. Let's say he doesn't love a job or he doesn't get the job that he wanted. Maybe he waits and then he's a number one name on the market next year. And he could have that option to go to the NFL, or Ryan Day continues to ruin Ohio State, then Ohio State could still be there next year. But I would say this. The Chargers, I think they have the most pressure on them. Like, I know the Commanders just hired a GM today. I think they're going to get Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Lions. But the Chargers still have at their picking of Belichick, Pete Carroll, Jim Harbaugh, and Mike Vrabel. One of those four guys got to wind up in Los Angeles. And Vrabel could be the guy that winds up in Los Angeles. And we'll see how it does shake on out. But my advice to Vrabel, I'm not just taking a job to take a job. You could take a year off and you will still have an abundance of options a year from now, because you have been such a good coach with not a lot of talent in Tennessee. And that one year you were a 1 seed and the other year you went to an AFC championship game. All righty. We will take a break. When we come on back, a man that played for Bill Belichick, knows Mike Vrabel, was a teammate of his, also was a teammate of Jerod Mayo. Kevin Faulk, the former Patriot running back, is going to join us when we return after these short messages.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Now back to the Zach Gelb Show.
You can stream the NFL on Westwood One for free, sponsored by AutoZone all season long. You can listen to every Westwood One broadcast of the NFL live on the NFL app by asking Alexa to open Westwood One Sports, or on the Odyssey app. Get in the zone, AutoZone. AutoZone's free battery testing and charging is available for free at your local AutoZone. Get in the zone, AutoZone. Restrictions apply. So a lot of big news the last few days. Pete Carroll out with the Seattle Seahawks as their head coach. You had Nick Saban retiring at Alabama. Kalen DeBoer is their new coach. And then Bill Belichick, after 24 seasons as the head coach of the Patriots, is out at one Patriot place, and they already have his replacement. That, of course, is Jerod Mayo. So now joining us is a man that knows everybody that we just talked about. He is a 3-time Super Bowl champion, and that is former Patriot running back in Kevin Faulk, kind enough to join us on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Kevin, appreciate the time as always. Good to see you. How you been?
I've been all right, Zach, man. Good to be on.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. So let's start in order here. The news comes out the other day that Bill Belichick and the Patriots are parting ways. You knowing Bill very well, when you finally heard that news after months of speculation, just what was your initial reaction to it?
Like everybody else, can't believe it. But like he always taught us, it's a performance league. You got to perform. You got to be consistent each and every week. And if you're not, they can remove you. And it happened.
When you put it into words, when you describe what Bill Belichick meant to you during your career, how do you kind of look back on the memories and describe that impact that he made on your career?
Just like any other coach you've had, he was part of that journey in a lot of guys' lives. He was just that final part, that last part that we needed in our lives. And for me, it was the little details that he always mentioned, that he always taught us about, that made that grand scheme of things. The big goal that you're looking out for, pay attention to those little details, because that's what's going to get you to achieve those goals.
What do you think Bill could still bring to a football team? Because I think the conversation the last 2 years has gotten so crazy with the team falling off and Brady won a Super Bowl. Like, wherever Belichick lands, what is a team getting in the greatest coach of all time in Bill Belichick?
You just said it all. They get the greatest coach of all time. I think Bill still has some juice with him. He's a football guy. I can't see him not coaching football. He lights up when you talk about football to him. When you're talking about a scheme, about the game of football, he lights up anything. But when you're trying to get something about an opponent, he's going to divert it somewhere else.
There's certain players that you could tell that Bill really respected. Brady, obviously, Rodney Harrison, guys like Troy Brown, and also yourself. I know that part of it was your play on the field, and you were kind of a do-it-all player, and that's what kind of fits the Belichick mold. But how about your guys' relationship individually? Like, how did that improve over the years when you first met him to when you walked away from the organization?
Well, Bill never talked to anyone when he first came to the organization. He was Bill. But then a few years in, he really opened up and started, conversating with guys in the hallway, giving us our good mornings and everything. And that's when it really started to change about Bill, the person, not just the football coach.
Do you think he's misunderstood at all? Because everyone has this perception of Bill. And then you talk to some of his former players. They know that he's a tough coach, but you hear like a different side of Belichick sometimes from the players. So do you feel like he's misunderstood when we talk about him?
Oh, definitely. When you get Bill one-on-one, it's totally different Bill. I call it like you want to corner him one-on-one. You don't want to be in like a team setting or a group setting with him because that's where he's at his best. But when you're one-on-one with him, it's just something about that opportunity to be one-on-one with him.
When you look back for you, Kevin Faulk, who joins us right now, the 3-time Super Bowl champion, what's the one play for you individually that stands out from your time in New England? Because I have an idea, I have a thought, but I'm curious what your favorite play was under Belichick.
Oh, definitely direct snap. It was one of those plays you knew it was coming, but stop it.
And you still see it run. Like even when they won the Super Bowl coming back down 28-3, they had that direct snap to James White. And that's got to be interesting for you individually. When you were at the start of the dynasty, and then you see the second dynasty form, and there were still similarities between the front end of the dynasty and then the back end of the dynasty.
Oh, there were a lot of similarities, Zach. Trust me. As a former player, you see those little small similarities that go on formation-wise, the play out of the formation. You've ran them so much in certain situations at the time of practice. You know exactly what they are when they're about to be ran. And the situation.
Wrapping up with Kevin Faulk right now. So one of your former teammates, Jerod Mayo, who was on the staff the last few years, he only played in the NFL as a member of the Patriots. It's announced today he's the new head coach. Just what are your thoughts on Jerod Mayo taking over for Bill?
Awesome. Couldn't ask for a better guy, work ethic-wise, smart-wise, knowing the game of football. He was one of those guys when he first came in, instantly you knew what type of player he was. He was a leader on the defense as a rookie. Bill knew something about him that we didn't in his rookie year, and he led the linebacker core in that defense, when his rookie year. So that meant a whole lot. Like I was telling one other guy, there were certain guys on our team that you knew that when they were done playing, they were going to be coaches. And he was definitely one of them.
Were you at all disappointed? I guess there was this succession plan in place in the contract, how it was reported, but there was some talks that maybe Mike Vrabel would have been the next coach. When you found out it was Jerod, even though you're happy for him, were you disappointed it wasn't Vrabel, one of your other former teammates?
Well, you kind of hear things. Like you said, you heard that they kind of had something in the works beforehand, and nobody really knew that Vrabel was going to get fired. Vrabel done a phenomenal job in Tennessee, so it was one of those shockers that he got fired at the time. So hey, things happen. Trust me, he's going to have a job before it's all said and done, because there are a lot of teams that's looking for a good head coach like Vrabel.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy who's available. Like your first year, right? You were coached under Pete Carroll in New England. I don't think anyone saw this coming, that Pete Carroll was going to be pretty much let go by the Seahawks. You were probably stunned when you first saw that, right?
Definitely. That was another shock. And I think it shocked the whole football world, really, that Pete Carroll was out of Seattle. And I'm not saying that it shocked him, but you see the emotion that he showed when he was giving his speech and everything. And that just shows and says who he is as a person.
Yeah, you're kind of right on that, because with Bill, it felt like it was time to split ways. And I think they both understood it. With Pete, you knew he was not happy about the decision that was made, and he wanted to keep on coaching that football team.
Definitely. It showed.
Wrapping up with Kevin Faulk, I got to ask you about Nick Saban, because you have it from going up against Saban when you would go up against him as a player, and then also when you were on the LSU staff that just won a national championship under Coach Orgeron a few years ago. Coach O, just had you kind of look back at this legendary career of Nick Saban, and what are some memories that come to mind for one Kevin Faulk?
First off, he was a Tiger before he was a Crimson Tide.
Yeah, that's true.
That's where it all started. But, one of the greatest college coaches ever, if not the greatest college coach ever. It's proven, his stats show it. He's done it all, developed players. You just look at the high-profile guys that's on social media tweeting about him, thanking him for, allowing them to be a part of his journey.
Last thing I'll ask you, and then I'll let you go get the dog a treat or two that we hear in the background. Sounds like the dog is. It sounds like the dog is hungry. But the last thing I'll ask you, we always get into this conversation, and maybe it's more of a media topic of conversation, but I'm curious your thoughts on this. People say, who's more important to the Patriot dynasty? Was it Brady? Was it Belichick? That gets very contentious at times. The conversation annoys the crap out of me. How do you answer that, though, when people ask you that question?
Well, they both were a match made in heaven. They were supposed to be together, and that's without a question, no doubt at all. But like I tell certain people, Tom was actually able to pick the team that he could go to. Belichick couldn't pick a veteran quarterback that he needed to replace Tom. So, certain things happen. And like he taught us, you got to be able to move forward no matter what.
Since retiring, you've been on a few staffs. If Jerod hits you up to join his staff, would you be interested?
We'll see what happens, man. You never know.
You got it. Well, Kevin Faulk, nothing but the best to you and your family. Always appreciate the time. Good luck, and thanks so much for doing this today.
I appreciate you, Zach. Thanks again.
There you go. Kevin Faulk joining us on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. And I'll never forget that 2-point conversion play, the direct snap up against the Carolina Panthers in Super Bowl 38. So appreciate him jumping on board with us. We'll take a time out. Ack's going to get you all caught up to date. Ack's been very busy this entire week. There's been a lot of updates, a lot of shocking updates.
Yeah, I was hoping we can save some of it for All-Star Week in February.
It's wild.
Space it out, a little more moderation.
I was saying to Samter before the show started, It's wild card weekend, and we have not talked about these games at all.
Not one bit. And even there has been speculation, although it has been unfounded, that one of them could even move.
Oh, yeah, right? That was the Buffalo game, which is crazy. You see the storm that's brewing in Buffalo, and then it's going to be a negative 30 windshield in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Would you go to that game?
No, definitely not. I'm a sissy in the in the cold weather.
Axe sitting at home with his hot cocoa, his feet up. He's chilling.
But did you know the original plan for Arrowhead was to have I don't want to say retractable cover.
Oh,
actually, I guess it would be retractable.
Wasn't there an athletics story?
That
you sent me this.
Yeah, great story.
It's one of the factoids.
They wanted it, but that wouldn't have helped in terms of keeping it hot tomorrow in Kansas City. Just would have covered it in case of rain or snow.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. I am not one of these people that get on the air whenever it's a cold weather game and go, you have to build a dome over every stadium.
Well,
I know that this is probably unsafe, but I love cold weather games, and I've been to a bunch of them with the success of my football team for the last 20 years. But I will say, you put a dome on that building, you open it to so many more opportunities, whether it's Final Fours and Super Bowls as well.
Well, that's why all these new stadiums that are coming up in Minnesota, Atlanta, SoFi, Las Vegas, that's why they all have domes. But I also think, too, as far as the NFL, we all love watching these cold weather games, and they're picturesque and they're fun.
Classics.
And they add an element to it. But the other side of that is, now that the NFL is playing an 18-week schedule starting after Labor Day, I mean, today was the anniversary of Joe Namath's guaranteed victory. And, I mean, now, granted, that's 56 years ago, but still, I mean, that's, it's still, the season would be ending now. We just, I think today's Friday. Sunday will be the anniversary of the first primetime Super Bowl.
How about that?
So, and we're not even into the, divisional wild card yet.
So I saw Frank the Tank, and I know we got to take a break. Frank the Tank just released a video from Barstool Sports where he named every World Series that we've ever had.
I saw the kid from Duke.
Yeah.
Good luck to that guy.
I think you could do something similar like that.
No, definitely not.
Now, you really know everything about sports.
Yeah, I'm not that good. Even
Act just said I'm crazy, but I'm not that crazy.
Even all the Super Bowls now, like when you're a kid, you can remember. I mean,
you get old. You say.
Well, at some
past
point,
your prime.
Like if you tell me 2005, well, that would be the Patriots and the Eagles, I guess, right?
Yeah.
In Jacksonville,
2004 season, 2005 Super Bowl.
Yeah, but like if you ask me right now, which year did it was right before that? The Rams and the Titans, the Robert
99,
Jones tackle,
I think.
Yeah, that was 90. But like some of these are a little fuzzy, like the Buccaneers Raiders. Like was it 2002? Was it 2003?
It
Like
was
some of
03.
those. It was 03.
It was 03.
There you go.
Yeah.
I had to touch that nerve.
Gruden sabotaged that game plan, according to Tim Brown.
So.
All righty, we'll take a timeout. Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio. Santa's got a few questions for me. I'll give you some answers. We do this segment every Monday, Friday. We call it Onside, Offside. Latest CBS Sports Radio update first with the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
Oh, Kalen DeBoer returned Washington to prominence quickly and is now on to the next challenge. The 49-year-old is taking a big step, heading to Alabama to take over for Nick Saban. And though he was only in Seattle for 2 years, he did go 25-3, and lifetime as a head coach is 104-12. Florida State's Mike Norvell benefited from being mentioned as a possible successor to Saban. He's staying in Tallahassee for an 8-year deal worth over $10 million a year. Washington is also losing Rome Odunze and Dylan Johnson, with both entering the NFL draft. The Patriots acted quickly in finding Bill Belichick's successor and didn't have to look very far, promoting defensive coordinator Jerod Mayo. The 37-year-old spent 8 seasons with the team as a player and has been part of their coaching staff since 2019. The Commanders reportedly set to name Niners assistant GM Adam Peters as their new president of football operations. Wild Card Weekend kicks off tomorrow with a pair of games starting with the Browns and emerging Texans in Houston, followed by the Dolphins and Chiefs in frigid Kansas City, where game time temperatures are expected to be in single digits. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Hey, this is Bart Winkler. I've got a new show weeknights. Join me for the Bart Winkler Show starting at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, only on CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Now back to the Zach Gelb Show.
Let's take a look at who's got home field advantage this weekend in our NCAA basketball preview. And it's sponsored by the fine folks at Fairfield by Marriott. Fairfield by Marriott is the official hotel partner of the NCAA. With over 1,000 locations around the country, you'll have the home field advantage. Visit fairfield.marriott.com to book your stay. On Saturday, number 9 Oklahoma, coached by Porter Moser, travels to Lawrence to take on number 3 Kansas. Kansas is 13-2 on the season and have won 8 straight games at Allen Fieldhouse. All righty, we got some questions. I'll give you some answers, or I'll hope to. We do this segment every Monday and Friday right here on CBS Sports Radio with the Zach Gelb Show. It's called Onside Offside. Moist Mike, Stuart Kovacs, take it away.
Zach's taking on the most polarizing issues in sports. Which side of the line of scrimmage will he end up on?
Offside. Defense number 69.
It's Onsides, Offsides with Zach Gelb on CBS Sports Radio.
My mouth is like watering right now because during the break, there is some caramel popcorn that was in the newsroom. 3 separate bags, and it was pretty tasty. But now, I just have, this sweet taste in my mouth, and it kind of makes it tough to talk. That always goes by when I say that it's always tough to eat food when you do a radio show.
You know, it'd be really nice to have a taste of that. Thanks for bringing me some.
Oh, you want me to go get you some? I'll go get it right now. I'll leave the show right now, and I'll go get you the popcorn in the newsroom.
Stu and I can do onside, offside.
Oh, what is that, Spike? You're getting in my ear?
Oh.
Don't let Stu and Samter take over the show. Okay, don't worry. Sorry. Boss vetoed it. Nothing I could do.
All right, you know what? You're getting into my skin. Let me get into your skin. Super duper, most awesome, wonderful, fantastic wild card weekend.
Pause.
Kicks off tomorrow.
Wait. Just stop. I'm sorry. This super wild card weekend stuff drives me nuts.
I know, which is why I wrote on the script, super duper, most awesome, wonderful wild card weekend.
When you have talk show hosts that go, it's super wild card weekend this weekend in the NFL. Oh, let me get all pumped up. Super wild card weekend. Oh, I think those people are insufferable, and it's such contrived energy. It's wild card weekend. Stop with super wild card weekend. Yo! Oh, jeez.
Man, do I know how to get under your skin. So super duper, most awesome, wonderful wild card weekend kicks off tomorrow as the Browns take on the Texans. Now, C.J. Stroud is likely to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Obviously, we'll see about Puka Nacua, but Joe Flacco is obviously red hot for the Browns. Now, onside, offside, you have more confidence in Flacco this weekend than Stroud.
That's a great question.
I know it is.
Don't get too cocky. Especially with those glasses on. I actually think the Browns are going to win the game. But in a weird way, I'm more confident in Stroud individually. If you ask me, am I more confident the Browns or Texans, I would say the Browns. But in terms of the individual quarterback, it's Stroud. Because even with how great Flacco is playing, he takes a lot of chances, and he's had some turnovers in these great performances. Stroud does not turn over the ball a lot. So you say to me I have more confidence in Flacco this weekend than Stroud, I would go offside.
Offside.
The Lions appear to have averted disaster as Sam Laporta might actually play this weekend after that gruesome-looking injury in Week 18.
Or it's a front.
Now, yesterday, Laporta discussed his recovery.
I got some reps today at practice, starting to feel better day by day. See where it takes me tomorrow, and really just taking it a day at a time, because when it first happened, it didn't feel great, and I feel like I've started to bounce back quickly, so we'll see, day to day.
You're optimistic.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. We'll see.
Now, onside, offside, the Lions...
is Kevin Faulk's dog in the background?
No, seriously. Whoa. Onside, offside, the Lions need Laporta to play if they hope to beat the rolling Rams.
That's offside. I do think the Rams are going to win this game. Laporta has been so big for them, and you could argue he has been their most impressive offensive weapon down the stretch, and that's saying something with Jahmyr Gibbs and St. Brown and some of the other players on this team. But I don't think just because you lose Laporta, that means you're definitely going to lose the game. I really do believe this is going to be the best game of the weekend. I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair type of game, and it's just going to be an absolute slugfest. And it may come down to which quarterback has the ball last. But you say to me the Lions need Laporta to play if they hope to beat the rolling Rams. It would help, but I don't think they have to have him. They have no shot if he's not available, so I'll go offside.
Offside. As aging legends like Carroll, Saban, and Belichick step aside, Andy Reid is in his 25th year as a head coach and turned 66 in March. Yesterday, Reid was asked if he has thought about when he might hang it up.
I haven't even thought about that, Nate. I mean, I'm thinking about one thing. I figured that would come up when you guys were asking these questions because I'm old. So, but not that old.
Onside, offside, you see Reid coaching at least 5 more years into his 70s.
I will say offside. I think the next time he wins a Super Bowl, and I think he'll win a Super Bowl again within the next 5 years. Won't be this year. That's when the clock really starts to tick on Andy Reid. So you see Reid coaching at least 5 more years into his 70s. I kind of see him coaching like another 4, I would say. So I'll go offside on that one.
Offside.
Now, the AP announced the first and second team All-Pros today, putting Myles Garrett and TJ Watt on the first team as edge rushers, meaning that Micah Parsons was relegated to the second team for that position. Onside, offside, if you were building a team, you would want both Garrett and Watt over Micah Parsons.
That's another great question, and I would say that that's on sides. As much as I love Micah Parsons as a football player, Myles Garrett and TJ Watt are 2 of the more destructive forces in football. And you know what? I would even want Max Crosby in front of Micah Parsons. I would say those 3, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, and Max Crosby are the 3 guys I would rather have over Micah Parsons. Now, let me be clear.
Wow.
That's not me, saying, oh, Micah Parsons sucks. I think Micah Parsons is a phenomenal football player. Just those 3 guys, I think, are just better football players. But you can't go wrong with any of the 4. But to answer your question, I would want, yes, Garrett and Watt over Parsons on sides.
Now, before Mike Norvell announced he was remaining at FSU and Kalen DeBoer took the Bama job, some believe Deion could be on the short list for either or both.
Who is that?
Well, you'll hear the rest of it, even though Coach Prime
Thank you.
has stated he
Don't
wants
be a
to stay in
non-believer.
Boulder. Onside, offside, Deion will remain at Colorado for at least another 3 years. 3 years.
I'm going to say that is offside. See, it would have been fascinating if Norvell got the Alabama job. Like, I thought it was going to be DeBoer, but if it ended up being Norvell, then Florida State would have opened, even though Coach Prime, did not want to acknowledge Florida State at his alma mater. There would have been a lot of people that would have said, Coach Prime, come home, come home, come home, come home. And it would have been fascinating to see if he would have done so. Now, Coach Prime got to coach better. Year 1 was still a success, but with the way that it started, you thought it would be a little bit better than only getting 1 game down the stretch to get to 4 wins on the season. But before the season, if you would have told me they would have won 4 games, I would have said, yeah, that absolutely is a success when he took over a program that won 1 game. I do believe, though, in an NIL and a transfer portal era, he will always be an attractive name, and a bigger school will come calling in the next 3 years. So Coach Prime will remain at Colorado for at least another 3 years. I will go offside on that one.
Offside.
Now, Carmelo Anthony wore number 15 for Denver.
Carmelo Anthony!
I can hear you on the PA at MSG. Now, Melo wore number 15 for Denver before Jokic donned the number, and Melo expressed some frustration about that on 7 p.m. in Brooklyn with Kid Mero podcast.
You had to feel away when they gave Jokic that 15, bro, because that's Melo.
Hell yeah.
Did you think it was a petty maneuver?
It was a petty maneuver. And y'all put Jokic in the middle of that. He don't know what the
He don't even care.
He could have been like, I want to wear 15. He could have been like, 15 is here. I can wear 15. Oh, that's Melo's no. You know what I mean? Like, just pay homage. I don't know. But what I believe is that they gave him 15 to try to erase
what you did,
what I did.
Your accomplishments over there.
Okay, onside, offside. Now, obviously, Jokic is the better player. He's the better nugget. But at the time, he was drafted in the second round, and a Taco Bell commercial overshadowed Jokic's announcement of the draft pick. So, while Jokic is clearly the better nugget, it is disrespectful that they gave a second-round pick Melo's number.
Well, no, so he had number 15 from the start?
He had it from the very start.
And no one knew this guy was going to go on to be the best player in the sport right
100%.
now.
And Melo,
Also, Melo had an
if he's
ugly
not the
split.
best of all time on that franchise, he's top 5.
Melo's a phenomenal player. But Melo had an ugly split from Denver. I don't think that they were just like, oh, we think this guy's going to be great, so let's give him Melo's number. I like Melo a lot. I don't necessarily agree that the Nuggets did this to just be petty and intentionally screw him. So while Jokic is clearly the better Nugget, it is disrespectful that they gave a second-round pick Melo's number. I would go offside on that one.
Offside. The Clippers gave Kawhi a 3-year, $152 million deal, despite him missing 160 games in the 4+ years he's been in L.A., and President Lawrence Frank didn't seem all that concerned.
There was no hesitation with it. I mean, we acknowledge that, look, he has been injured, and injuries are part of the game. And in this game, look, anybody can get injured, but not anybody can be a top 5 player, and Kawhi is.
Onside, offside, it was a mistake to give Kawhi that extension.
I'll say offside, even though I don't trust that Clippers team, but you eventually lose Kawhi Leonard. What the heck did the Clippers turn out to be? Like, you need Kawhi, you need Paul George. You try to keep that group together as long as possible, because once you lose those guys, even though they've both been injured a ton, and you kind of go back to being an irrelevant team, even though you have an owner that is very aggressive, an owner that will spend his money and is energetic. You made that deal. You got to keep on riding with those guys and see if they could ever get healthy together at the right time, because that's been the one problem with that team. They just have not been able to be healthy the last few years.
Offsides. Now, the fall of Klay Thompson continues as he and the team were booed by Warriors fans at home. And then after the game, Klay was pretty disrespectful to the fans.
Klay, you guys have been booed each of the last 2 home games. Obviously, you're not used to that. How do you handle that?
Are you supposed to lose sleep over it?
Huh. And I don't know if you heard earlier on, he said, "I don't care." He kind of said it under his breath.
I don't think that's disrespectful. Fans want to boo you, that's fine. He just says, "I don't care." Whatever. Keep it moving.
I don't know. I like it better when a player just says, like, they should boo us because we're not playing well or something. But like,
but I don't think he was
care,
attacking
and, like,
the fans there.
No, but like,
he just
I
kind
don't
of brushed
care.
it off.
Like that feels, I don't know. Anyway, onside, offside. Assuming Klay is traded, he can still be a vital piece to a contender.
He's not still the same player that he once was. Clearly, obvious statement right there. He's not going to get a long-term deal done with the Warriors unless he takes a massive discount. The Warriors should move on. I would trade him. And you look at a team like the Lakers, they could use shooting. His dad is the color analyst for the radio team. Philadelphia could use him as well. There are some destinations there, and I think in a role that isn't where he's used to being a star, I do believe in a different role he could find more success for the remaining career of the NBA. So, yeah, I do think he'd be a vital piece to contender on sides.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
And away we go, hour number 3 of our radio program. That's right, it is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on CBS Sports Radio. The biggest news of the day. You know, probably when we walked into the newsroom, it was, Jerod Mayo is going to be the next head coach of the Patriots. And then it's up. We found out the next coach of Alabama. And that is Kalen DeBoer leaving Washington, where in his last 2 years, he did guide them to a 25-3 record and just lost the national championship game up against Michigan. And shortly after that happening on Monday, you find out Nick Saban, surprise, surprise, he's walking away, he's retiring. And then 48 hours later after that announcement from Nick Saban, you do have Alabama tabbing their next guy in Kalen DeBoer. And they had to move quickly, too. And that's what you're seeing now. When you have a big prime piece of real estate, which Alabama, right, is the preeminent job, in my opinion, in the sport. You don't act quickly. You allow this to linger. Like, you're going to lose players anyway because Saban is walking away. But to try to keep some of those players, you need a hire. And I think for most people, this is a positive hire. But I do believe that there will be a loud, vocal minority who will be a bunch of dopes and won't really make that much sense and will vehemently oppose this hire because of 2 reasons. One, it's not Nick Saban, all righty? And you got to get over that. We all know Nick Saban is the king. Nick Saban is the GOAT. Nick Saban has won 7 national championships. 6 of them were at Alabama. But it was his right and his prerogative to walk away. He's allowed to make that decision. He's allowed to retire. That's what happens in life. At one point, you're young. Then you become established. Then you eventually get old. And it's time to do what you want to do and retire and not have to work each and every day for a job that, even though it's Alabama and, right, the wheels practically spin on their own, but with how controlling Nick Saban is and how he has his hands in everything and his fingerprints all over that program to bringing them back, you know that he operates a certain way. And even he said that he was starting to get tired this year and didn't feel like the same person. So I understand that it's not Saban. There's going to be an adjustment. DeBoer will keep some things Saban did and also change things as he should. Because you got to put your own spin on it when you get this job. And also, you know, I hate this saying, and I know we live in a world of sayings and cliches. Oh, you don't want to be the guy that replaces the guy. You want to be the guy that replaces the guy that replaces the guy. Yeah, I know it's tough to walk into a job and you'll never fill the shoes of Nick Saban. But it doesn't mean that you can't be successful. Like, DeBoer wins a national championship at Alabama. Are people going to be sitting there and saying, oh, my God, it's not Nick Saban? So there's still a level of success that Kalen DeBoer can have. It's just not going to be to the level where there's 6 national championships. And let me just break some news to you. You're not going to see a run in this new era of name, image, and likeness and the transfer portal like we got to see with Nick Saban, because that's the toughest part. I know Saban had 4 5-star recruits all over his roster and then some, but there's still a player development that has to happen. And when you're at Alabama, a big brand like that, and you're still trying to develop players that have never been told no in their life, when they're told they're not ready to get on the field, some players will embrace it. Some players say, oh, I love the competitive environment here. And others will say, I'll go elsewhere. It's just the nature of the beast. And heck, even Nick Saban grew tired of NIL, because you look at some of these other schools like A&M. Remember that whole fight with Jimbo Fisher? Why did that start? Because Jimbo Fisher, the #1 recruiting class, he was at a small business conference in Alabama, and he was basically begging people to donate more money. So I get what Saban walked away, and I understand that's tough to move on from it, but it doesn't mean that DeBoer can't have success. And the other thing, as Emmitt Smith said on this show, when he's like, oh, that makes me hot, when talking about Ezekiel Elliott and why he's no longer with the Dallas Cowboys. What makes me hot about this analysis and just some of the stupidity that I hear from some people, oh, DeBoer's going to fail. He's going to fail because he doesn't have SEC roots. He doesn't have Alabama roots. Like, what are we doing? The coach that you love, Nick Saban, before he got to Alabama, let's go back to when he was at LSU, where he ended up winning a national championship. What roots did he have at LSU? What roots did he have in the South? I get it. He was coaching at Michigan State. DeBoer's coming over from Washington. He just took Washington to a national championship game. He used the transfer portal, right? Michael Penix Jr. and a bunch of other players. And he was able to beat Texas, a school that, oh yeah, by the way, Alabama lost to by 10 points when Alabama was home this year. So this idea that just because you have no affiliation to the university, you don't have affiliation to the South, you can't recruit in the South, it's a bunch of bull crap. And I'll give you more examples. And I'll give you 2 more. One which was years ago, and one was more present day or current within the last 5-6 years. You know, you look at Urban Meyer. When Urban Meyer got to Florida, where are his roots in the South? What was his attachment to Florida? They were a huge force for 5 years when Urban Meyer was there. And then, you know, I'll just speak from a personal experience. When Matt Rule left Temple to go to Baylor, a lot of people crushed that hire in Waco, Texas. They said, Matt Rule has no ties to Texas. You're bringing a Northeast guy to Texas? Oh, he's going to fail. And Matt Rule basically had no resources at Baylor because of the scandal that happened there and the disgusting things that happened under Art Briles. And Matt Rule had that team in a Big 12 championship game. Had that team in the Sugar Bowl in short order. So you can end up having success even if you are in unfamiliar territory. And I do think it makes it easier now when there is a transfer portal where you could bring some of your guys in, and then also when you could utilize name, image, and likeness. And even though, right, Saban was getting fed up with the recruiting a little bit and name, image, and likeness, DeBoer is going to walk in with more resources at Alabama than he's ever had before. And this guy has had a great rise. He's been around multiple jobs, whether it was a smaller job, a medium size, a big size job, and now he has the biggest job to exist in the sport. And everywhere the guy has gone, he's won. So when you were like, I remember, I had a conversation once with Chris Olivero, who runs, our company here. And Chris Olivero, when Mark Chernoff, right, who's like the Nick Saban of program directors, when he retired, like Chris said to me, I'm looking for someone, as much as we love Mark, that was opposite than Mark, different than Mark. That doesn't really have too many attachments than Mark. Because when you're replacing a legend and you bring in a disciple or you bring in someone that was similar to that legend, I understand the theory, but sometimes it's good to bring in someone that was totally different to create this new era, to create this new wave, and to try to have more success and put a different spin on it. Because if you would have had a Saban disciple take over, everything would have been compared to Saban. Now, I get it. In some regard, DeBoer's always going to be compared to Saban because Saban was there before him. But bringing in someone new, bringing in someone different for a new era and new times of name, image, and likeness in the transfer portal, it makes sense. It's not a bad thing. And like, who were Alabama fans wanting? Dan Lanning, that was the guy that you wanted? Well, he wanted to stay at Oregon. I don't think that they preferred Sark or Norvell or Lane Kiffin over Kalen DeBoer. And as much as I love Lane Kiffin, I said this yesterday, when I think of Alabama, I know Kiffin was there, but he just seems like a perfect match for Ole Miss. And I would trust DeBoer more than I would Lane Kiffin, even with Lane Kiffin just winning 10 games this year in the SEC at Ole Miss. But that's the other thing with DeBoer. He is unflappable. I know Kalen DeBoer. I've been around Kalen DeBoer. This dude is going to have to, with probably a vocal minority of people, he is going to have to deal with intense criticism from the start. I don't think this guy cares. He'll pay his respects to Nick Saban. He'd be a dummy not to. But we've had him on 3 times throughout this legendary season. You can never tell if it was after a win or a loss. And the guy didn't lose a single game this year up until the national championship game. This dude is just a coach that's made for this new era of college football. And I don't know where else you would have gone or what else you would have done. And you could tell me Dan Lanning. I love Dan Lanning. Love him. I said this to Dan Lanning's face, that the reason why I like him so much is because he, and I meant this in a respectful way, he just has that football psycho kind of feel to him. You see him get on the football field, that's his sanctuary. You see him talk to his team, that's in his sanctuary. And he just is wired differently. So that would have been an excellent hire. But DeBoer has to be at the top of the list, if not a top 3 name. And if you get your top 3 name for the job, I know you're Alabama, what's wrong with this hire? So I don't have concerns. And I think DeBoer will be able to survive some of the initial challenges where in a few years from now, we're looking back at it. And that gets to the timeline too. What is the timeline for Kalen DeBoer? They had to pay some money to buy him out. I haven't seen the details of the contract, but if Washington was offered to double up his salary and make it about $9 million a year, he's going to make north of that clearly at Alabama. So I got to say, it's 3 years. You're in a 12-team, like next year, you better be in the playoff. I'll say that. You missed the playoffs this year when you go to 12, when Nick Saban didn't even have his best Alabama team. Maybe some people said it's the worst Nick Saban team that he's had that's ever won an SEC or got to a playoff. So even though there's going to be changes, you now expand from 4 to 12. You got to be a top 12 team in college football next year. I think that's the initial bar. And I know some Alabama fans will not want to hear that because they expect greater. But I think you give this guy 3 years and you see what happens after that. But why can't this guy, in short order, continue to have Alabama with the look of a national championship team? Heck, the guy was just at Washington. Right? It was trending the wrong direction in the transition after Chris Peterson. He jumps in there. He restores the program. They lost outside the national championship game 2 games. 2 games in the last 2 years. Michael Penix Jr., under his tutelage, went from being an afterthought to a Heisman Trophy finalist. Right in that grouping of guys the last 2 years that people thought he should have won the award. So why can't he make it work? Why can't he be successful? And I'm not someone that always gets on the radio when a hire is made and throw the pom-poms up and go, oh, yeah, wonderful job by Alabama, wonderful job by this school. If I like a hire, I'll tell you. If I think a hire's crap, I'll tell you that as well. But I just don't understand, outside of it not being Saban coaching your team next year, why you would be against Kalen DeBoer coming in. And the future of the SEC, and really college football, but the SEC in particular, is fascinating. Lane Kiffin has Ole Miss rolling. They have a wonderful transfer portal. LSU, can Brian Kelly, right? You have 3 head coaches since 2000 that have won national championships. LSU is one of the more, LSU and USC were the 2 most disappointing teams in college football last year. Can LSU start to get going under Brian Kelly? A&M just brought in Elko. You have Hugh Freeze at Auburn. You know, Georgia, they've been the most dominant team as of late in college football, and they lost 1 game to Alabama, and they were on the outside looking into the playoff, and you returned Carson Beck. You know, Missouri had a good year. Tennessee, good year 2 years ago. You know, this year they were fine at 9-4. Can Heupel continue to move that train in the right direction? And you got guys like Shane Beamer who's got to get going. Billy Napier, got to get going. Mark Stoops, I think he's done all he could at Kentucky. I think A&M fans were crazy to not want Mark Stoops, but they didn't want him. And then also, oh yeah, by the way, you get those 2 mega brands coming in. Texas, rolling. Quinn Ewers coming back. Arch Manning right behind him. And Oklahoma makes their way into the SEC as well. This is a fun time. And Georgia's still going to be looked at as the kings of the SEC. But Alabama is still going to be right there. And when you look at all these conferences, like in the Big Ten, it's really been Ohio State and Michigan. Well, now you could reverse that, flip-flop it. Michigan and Ohio State also sounds better and it's more true. And then there's been people fighting for that 3rd spot. It's been Penn State, been Wisconsin, Iowa. You know, people fighting for that 3rd spot. In the SEC, the 2 teams for a long time now have been Georgia and Alabama. And it's out of everybody else in that conference now, Texas, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, LSU, A&M, Auburn, Georgia, Tennessee, on and on and on, Florida. Who is going to emerge as that 3rd team? And will that 3rd team have enough to usurp Georgia, to usurp Alabama, whether that's for a year or for a few years? Because you saw LSU with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and all those great guys on that team find a way to usurp them. You saw Auburn years ago find a way to get to the national championship. You know, you've seen it before. You've seen it happen. But can you consistently do it? And in a new era of name, image, and likeness, the transfer portal, not that the playing field is now even, but it makes it easier to do it. But it's one thing to say it's easier, and then there's another thing to actually do so. So congratulations to Kalen DeBoer. I'm thrilled for him, and I think it's a wonderful, wonderful hire by Alabama. Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio. We'll take a break. We'll come on back. We got NFL picks to get to on Wild Card Weekend. Hopefully the picks will be super, but we will get to our picks when we return in 5 minutes.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Now back to the Zach Gelb Show.
All righty, this is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Now joining us from BetMGM tonight via BetQL is, of course, Ryan Horvat in his weekly spot. Stu, let's cue up the music. We will get right to it. We'll get some NFL picks music up in just a second as we have 6 games starting tomorrow and wrapping up on Monday night with Eagles and Bucks to get to. So Ryan Horvat from BetMGM tonight via BetQL. Let's get to it. We'll start things off Browns and Texans. I think this is the toughest game. I really do. I have no feel on this game. I'm going to lean with the Cleveland Browns laying 1.5. I don't like it either way. I would probably stay away from this game, but if I have to make a pick on the air, even though that line started to move down a little bit, I will go with the Browns laying 1.5. Horvat, what do you got?
Yeah, when this opened up at 3, I like the Texans, but the more I look at this game, I just think it's a really bad matchup, and I do think, if you could get a cheap money line price, just the Browns to win this game, I think it's probably the right side. You have Joe Flacco going against a weak Texans secondary. Houston's only faced one passing offense, ranked better than 13th this season. They have Amari Cooper. He's been resting for 2 weeks. Last time he saw Houston, he had 11 receptions, 265 yards, 2 touchdowns. And David Njoku is a nightmare matchup here. Houston's linebackers and safeties aren't great in coverage. And I would like Houston if they were able to get after the quarterback here, but Will Anderson was only able to play 31 snaps against the Colts, so I'm worried about his health. And as much as I like C.J. Stroud, if you look at this, since Week 9, they haven't faced a whole ton of legit pass defenses, just 3 pass defenses inside the top 15. And C.J. Stroud is really good against cover 3, really good against zone defense, but he struggles against man defense, also struggles when he's under pressure, and the Browns are number 2 in pass rush win rate. So unless the Texans could hit some explosive plays here, I think Cleveland's the right side, and I think they win this game on the road.
So we're both on the Cleveland Browns laying 1.5. If you're listening to the show, that means you probably should fade us right now, because when Horvat and I usually agree, it goes the other way. Next up, Dolphins and Chiefs. We'll go in order here. It's weird. This is the game that I'm buzzing on the most, because sometimes you got to be uncomfortable to win money. And every single Tom, Dick, and Harry in America is going to tell me, Horvat, Chiefs are going to win. It's Mahomes. It's Reed. Chiefs. It's freezing cold conditions. Wind chill of negative 30 or whatever is being reported. Oh, the Dolphins are coming up from Florida. No way they're going to win. And I say the Chiefs receivers can't catch the football in 75 and sunny. What makes me think they're going to be able to catch it on Saturday evening when it's feels like negative something degrees? I know that the Dolphins defense is banged up. They have injuries on both sides of the ball. The Chubb injury just when they were starting to find life after Jalen Phillips is massive. I don't care. I don't trust this Chiefs team. I don't trust their offense all throughout the season. Not only am I taking the points here, if you can't tell, Dolphins +4, I'm picking the Dolphins outright, 20-17 over the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs go home on Wild Card Weekend. Your thoughts?
Yeah, we're on the same side. I like the points with the Dolphins. I think they win this game outright, and I actually like the under as well. Everybody's going to talk about the weather. Everybody's going to talk about Tua, being a warm weather quarterback. But the reason I like Miami is Mike McDaniels in that run game, right? The Dolphins are going to be able to run the ball here. It looks like Waddle's going to be able to give it a go. It looks like Raheem Mostert's going to be able to give it a go. They're going to have both backs healthy. And the Chiefs right now are dead last in run-stop win rate. And you have Mike McDaniels, former run game coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. That's his bread and butter, right? And the Chiefs are 28th in EPA per rush allowed. That's their weakness. Miami has a top 10 offensive line, even with all those injuries this season. And they're number 3 right now in rushing efficiency. And they're battle tested. They're number 3 in rushing efficiency. And that's against a top 10 schedule against the run. I like the Chiefs defense, but they're built to play with leads. They have a bunch of solid pass rushers. They have a pretty good secondary. I like Snead. And Tua's not good when he's pressured, but here's what nobody's talking about. When Tua's kept clean, he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. When he's under pressure, he's outside the top 20. But the way to pressure Tua is natural pressure, because against the blitz, which Spags and the Chiefs love to do, they're blitzing at the 7th highest rate this season. Tua's actually graded the number 1 quarterback against the blitz. So unless the Chiefs are able to get some natural pressure, I actually think he might be able to hit some of these short throws, some of these crossing routes. They're going to be able to run the football. I like Miami a lot in this game. I know they've only beat one playoff team. I think they're minus 91 point differential against playoff teams, but I think they're going to pull off the upset here, and Mahomes is heading home. And then we'll see what they do this offseason, man. The Chiefs need a wide receiver. I'd love to see them pick up T. Higgins.
Talking to Ryan Horvat right now, BetMGM tonight via BetQL. The Buffalo Bills, going to be snowy. They're already saying fans will give you $20 if you help us find a way to shovel out that stadium. I know last time it snowed big, my buddy Deion Dawkins had fans lining up at his house to get him out of his driveway to make sure that the snowman got to the stadium to do some snow plowing on the field. I think this spread is tricky because I think it's begging you to take the points with the Steelers. Bills are a 9.5-point favorite. I do not like that hook I look at that and I say to myself, the Bills could kind of cover it with a field goal or a touchdown at the end where it's close, and then it ends up being a 20-10 game. I know that the Steelers have looked better under Mason Rudolph. No TJ Watt in this one. I probably should take the points, but I think that there's going to be a score late that ends up covering the number for Buffalo. Give me the Bills laying 9.5. What say you?
Yeah, so I'm going to pick the Bills, but if this weather is as bad as it looks, I could see the path for the Steelers to cover here just because you could also run the ball on Buffalo, right? And Najee Harris, the last 3
I love
weeks,
the under, by the way, of 33.5. Love it.
Same here. I don't care how low this goes. And that's what scares me a little bit, laying this big number with the Bills, 9.5, 10, when we're looking at a total only 35.5. And also, the Bills, like we just talked about with the Kansas City Chiefs, that's a team that's built to play with the lead. They're 24th at EPA per rush, 17th overall rush defense. But they do get Daquan Jones back, and the splits are much better with him on the field. So I'm going to pick Buffalo. Everybody's going to talk about TJ Watt and what he brings for the pass rush, but he's also really important as a run defender. Last year when they lost him, the run defense kind of fell off a cliff. Teams were averaging 100 more total yards against the Steelers. I think Buffalo's the better team. They're the more talented team. But if the weather gets crazy and Josh Allen turns the ball over, this could get ugly. But I'm going to go with the Bills just because I think when they get in the red zone, they're going to be able to lean on that run game. And I think Josh Allen's going to use his legs. So I like him over 8.5 rushing attempts. I like him to score a touchdown. And I'm going to go Bills at 9.5.
Ryan Horvat here with us on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. So 3 games down, 3 more to go, and we agree so far. Browns laying 1.5, Dolphins +4, and Bills laying 9.5. So hopefully we're on the right side of things. Or not, we're going to have to make up some money in the final 3 games. Once 4:30 p.m. Eastern time hits on Sunday, it's the go, Pack, go! Up against those drama Dallas choking Cowboys. 7 points is the number here. This has been a super-duper successful season for the Packers. It's been a good look for Matt LaFleur. It's been a good look for Jordan Love. All good things come to an end. They will be a team that's alive for next year. The 7 points, you can't get a little uncomfortable there. Dallas, you always expect them to choke it up on a big stage. I think the Cowboys, though, are going to find the way to win this game by 10 points. Give me the Dallas Cowboys laying 7. You?
All right, so I played Green Bay at 8, and I still like Green Bay at 7. I think the angle here is I like Dallas in the first half. They're 4-point favorites just because Green Bay is the youngest team in playoff history, and it's going to be an electric crowd, obviously, in Jerry's world. Jordan Love, youngest wide receiver room in the league. Maybe he makes a mistake or two. I think Dallas definitely has a 4-point lead going into the half, but then I'm a little worried about Dallas, man. I have some Dallas futures in the NFC, and if you look since their bye, 48% of passes, 44% of runs have graded successful against their defense. The reason we consider them a top defense is that pass rush. They're number 1 in pass rush win rate. That's what Dan Quinn does. But here's the problem in this matchup. The Packers' offensive line is very good. They're number 2 in pass block win rate. That's even without David Bakhtiari. And all of a sudden, Jordan Love, since week 12, has been a top 5 quarterback. He's getting rid of the ball quicker. He's taking the underneath stuff. Everything's not just him hunting the deep ball. And he's going through all of his progressions. And the Cowboys also 30th against the run. Aaron Jones, 3 straight 100-yard games. I think Green Bay could be able to keep this game close if Joe Barry doesn't get exposed. That's the issue here. Joe Barry's defense. They allowed Tommy DeVito to be NFC Player of the Week. Baker Mayfield had a perfect QB rating at Lambeau Field. Bryce Young had his first 300-yard passing performance. But I like what they did last week. Last week on third downs, they played more man coverage. Usually they play a bunch of soft zone. They're going to need a healthy Jair Alexander. If he's not able to go or if he's not 100% and they have to play soft zone against CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson, I think Dak's going to have a big game here. But I'm going to go with the Packers +7, but I do like Dallas in the first half, and I do think they win the game, but that's a tricky line.
All righty, so the first game we disagree with. I'll take the Cowboys laying 7. Ryan Horvat goes with the Packers +7. He's back in the pack. All righty, Sunday Night Football. Bum, bum, ba-da-bum, bum, ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-bum. Rams and Lions on NBC, yeah. Rams-Lions matchup. Lions 3-point spread. I want to take Detroit. I want to see Detroit win their first playoff game since the 1991 season, but nobody's talking about maybe the second best team in the NFC right now, and that's the Los Angeles Rams, who have won 7 out of their last 8 games. They have the experience with McVay, with Stafford, with Kupp, with Aaron Donald. And they also have the youth in Williams and Puka Nacua, who would have won Offensive Rookie of the Year if it wasn't for that guy, C.J. Stroud, who is unbelievable. I think this has like a 31-30 game written all over it. You know, I think that this is going to be like a 1-point game, maybe a 2-point game. I like the Rams, though, plus the 3. And I'll even say it right now, I like the Rams outright. Give me the Rams. Matthew Stafford, I'm coming home. And he's going to be wrecking that homecoming party for Lions fans that are going to boo him or cheer him before the game and then boo him during the game. So give me the Rams.
All right, so I feel like, man, I like the Rams too. Everybody likes the Rams. I feel like they're almost becoming like too trendy. I did bet them +4, and I think they win the game. I mean, you said it all, man. Like, they're number 2 offensively by DVOA the second half of the season. The only offense better is the San Francisco 49ers. They've won 7 of 8 games since their bye. Their only loss was in overtime to the Ravens, and that's actually probably their best data point. I know they haven't beat a bunch of great teams, but they've scored 31 points per game over their last 6. They've scored at least 26 in all 6 games, except for last week when they started Carson Wentz. But, man, and that's the path to beating the Lions, right, is you throw the ball on them. That pass defense, I believe, is like 25th in the league right now. But the case I can make for the Lions is they're top 5 against the run. If they could shut down Kyren Williams, the other thing they could do is get after the quarterback. And Matthew Stafford is great when he's got a clean pocket, but he struggles when he's under pressure. Also, Detroit loves to run the ball. The Rams, they're trending better against the run, but they're still outside the top 20. I don't love that Rams defense. But yeah, I'm picking the Rams, man. But I could also see where Detroit does end up winning this game just because it's becoming so trendy. But that was the first bet that I placed, and that's my biggest bet of the weekend. I like Los Angeles to beat Detroit in the Matthew Stafford revenge game. Nobody knows Jared Goff better than Sean McVay, so I think Goff and Ben Johnson might get exposed here, unless they're able to run the ball like 4 or 5 yards per carry.
So as we go into the final game, we both have the Browns laying 1.5. We have the Dolphins +4. Bills -9.5. I am on Buffalo. You're on Buffalo as well. I'm on the Cowboys laying 7. You're on Green Bay +7. And we're both on the Rams +3. Final game. I'll let you go first here, Horvat. Eagles and Bucks. The Eagles with Jalen Hurts, who supposedly can't throw the football all throughout the week with this finger injury. And everyone can't stand Nick Sirianni right now because he can't have any order in his locker room. The Eagles on the road against the NFC South champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a 3-point favorite. Is Philly on upset alert, or do you like them covering the 3?
All right, so the bet of the week, other than the Rams for me, is actually the first half under 21 because of what you said with Jalen, and Philadelphia's run game really hasn't got going. And I mean, like what we learned about the Eagles, I think, this season, on the defensive side of the ball, they really miss Jonathan Gannon and C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Pass defense outside the top 25. They can still stop the run, and they can still get after the quarterback. So I think this will be a lower-scoring, feel-it-out process in the first half. But, you know, I still think, man, at 2.5, at 3 now, the Eagles, this number is short. I'm waiting to fade them. I just don't know that I could do it this weekend with Todd Bowles and a beat-up Baker Mayfield, you know, even at home here. I like the Eagles in a lower scoring game. The other thing we're figuring out about the Eagles, man, they really miss Shane Steichen. This is a completely different offense. Yeah. It's not even just the injuries to A.J. Brown and to Jalen. Like, they walk up to the line of scrimmage. Last season, they were top 10 in tempo. This season, they're moving into snail's pace. I do think that they win this game, and then they get bounced next week. So I'm going to wait to fade the Eagles just because it's Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield. Lower scoring game. I'll take Philadelphia, but I love the first half under here.
I don't know why. When I see the spread as Eagles laying 3, and I've been as critical as anyone can be the last few weeks, I think it's begging you to take Philadelphia. But I can't trust that locker room right now. I can't. A.J. Brown deleting social media today. You've heard things even before then. You know, I don't have a great football analysis on why the Bucs are going to win this game other than they have a good defense. You know, on offense, I like Mike Evans. He's a big game player. We know that. 1,000 yards each and every year. Like, if you would have told me before the season I would have picked the Eagles to lose in the first round, I wouldn't have ever believed it. I would say, like, what are you smoking? What drugs are you doing in your spare time? But I like the Bucs in this one, +3. So here are the picks. We're both on the Browns, laying 1.5. Dolphins +4, we're both on them. Bills -9.5, we are both on them. Cowboys laying 7. That's me. Horvath goes Green Bay +7. Rams +3. I'm taking the Bucks +3. And then Horvath goes the Eagles -3. Sounds good to you? Did I get that all right?
Sounds great to me. Hey, is that like if the Eagles do get bounced, is Sirianni
fired? Sirianni fired.
Year? Wow. And what we're figuring out, man, is the brains kind of left town there, right? Like I said, Shane Steichen, Jonathan Gannon, those were the brains behind the operation. But it's crazy. From coaching in a Super Bowl to maybe not having a job. I mean, it's been a mess for Philadelphia the last couple of weeks, and that defense is bad. Even when Tommy DeVito came in relief last week, they were driving up and down the field. So I am worried about Philadelphia.
Well, let me be clear. I think he should be fired. I don't know if he'll actually get fired because Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie like that puppet. And it's clear that Nick Sirianni is a puppet right now, and they enjoy being the puppet master. So we'll see from there. Anyway, Ryan Horvath from BetMGM tonight and BetQL. Thanks so much, my friend.
Thanks, man. Enjoy the games this weekend.
You got it. All righty. We'll talk about Nick Sirianni's job when we come on back. And are we starting to see the close of the Chiefs championship window? We'll get into those two topics when we return. But first up, with the latest CBS Sports Radio update, here is the Act Man, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
In less than 72 hours, Alabama has found Nick Saban's successor, getting Washington's Kalen DeBoer to take over. He just led the Huskies to the national championship game, but came up short. He did go 25-3 in his 2 seasons in Seattle. Washington is said to have made a push to retain its coach, offering to double his salary. It's been a rough day for the Huskies, who lost 2 more players to the NFL draft, with Rome Odunze and Dylan Johnson both leaving. Saban's retirement benefited former assistant Steve Sarkisian and Mike Norvell. The latter received an 8-year extension from Florida State with an annual salary north of $10 million. Bill Belichick is gone, but the torch has been passed to one of his assistants, with defense coordinator Jerod Mayo succeeding his former boss. The 37-year-old has been part of New England's coaching staff since 2019 after 8 years as a player for the team. The Commanders' front office reshaping has begun with the reported hiring of Adam Peters as the new general manager. He was an assistant in San Francisco after being part of Super Bowl winners in New England and Denver. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Hey, this is JR. Let's hang out weeknights here on CBS Sports Radio for my show, The JR Sport Brief, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick. From the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
It's time to answer our Ask the Pros question of the day, and it's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Thomas in Kansas City says, Zach, how do you see the rest of the Chiefs' window being in terms of winning a championship? How open is it? You could submit a question by tweeting at CBS Sports Radio or at Zach Gelb using the hashtag #AskThePros. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts. I still think the Chiefs' window is open. I don't think they're winning a Super Bowl this year. I just predicted that they're going to go down to Miami this upcoming weekend. But even if you do see a Kansas City win this weekend, it's not like I'm going to have all the confidence in the world starting to brew with the Kansas City Chiefs. But they still have an open window because you have 15. And sometimes you need these years. And I can't call the Chiefs a dynasty yet because they've won 2 championships. They win a third one, they're a dynasty. But when you are going through the makings of a dynasty or the looks of a dynasty, sometimes you need a year where you have to get things to be reset a little bit. And when I say reset, it's not a rebuild because there's nowhere close to rebuilding. It's just a reset where you go, okay, let's see what the problem is. Because our defense has been good enough. The problem's on the offensive side of the ball. We know 15 isn't the problem in Patrick Mahomes. We know Andy Reid isn't the problem. So what's the problem? And the problem is, all righty, you won a Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill. Travis Kelce, though, last year was dominant. This year, even though when he slows down, he's still really good, he's not as dominant as he once was. Maybe he'll return to that form next year. But I do believe to get the Chiefs back into a championship form, they need to go get a number one wide receiver. They need to go get someone that actually sparks legitimate fear into the defense. Because as great as Kelsey's been, I don't think Kelsey this year is someone that you're shaking in your boots, or if you slow him down, no one else on the team is going to be able to catch the ball. Now, I like Isaiah Pacheco when he could stay healthy, but he's a running back. You need a pass catcher to get to Kansas City. And I said this from the start, and I don't think it's their fault. I think it was more so what DeAndre Hopkins prioritized. It would have made so much sense in the world for DeAndre Hopkins to be on this Kansas City team. Like, they probably get to the Super Bowl if they have DeAndre Hopkins this year. But they've just, Rashee Rice has been their best wide receiver as of late. You can't have Rashee Rice be your best wide receiver if you're expecting to go win 3 playoff games to get to the Super Bowl. So I heard Horvath say T. Higgins. Oh, that would be great. Could you imagine T. Higgins with Mahomes, and also you factor in all the animosity between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals? You'd have someone flipping the rivalry, and then we get that number one wide receiver status that you can't get in Cincinnati because of the greatness of Jamar Chase. But you got to find a way, whether it's in the draft or whether it's in free agency. Like Mike Evans, they may franchise tag him. They could, but he's a free agent. Why don't you go get Mike Evans? Mahomes, Mike Evans, hello, Super Bowl. Right? I know it probably won't happen, and I don't want to give Stu a heart attack in the final 5 minutes of the show. But Davante Adams, if let's say the Raiders don't hire Antonio Pierce, he gets to know what he wants out. Everyone says, he'll probably get traded to the Jets, team back up with Aaron Rodgers. I know it's in division, so it would be tough. And you'd basically be handing the Chiefs another championship. But you could run up that price. You could double that price from what it'd be for any other team with the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, Stu, let me ask you this. Would you be against trading Davante? Like, let's say Davante Adams comes to you. I want nothing to do with the Raiders anymore. You guys are a pathetic disgrace to football. We got to get rid of you. I'm sick and tired of being on this team. It drives me crazy, and I wanted to be here. I want out. Would you be okay with them trading him to the Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah, there'd be a tax on it. Like, they'd have to get, 2 firsts or something like that.
It'd be the Stu tax.
Yeah, the Stu tax, yeah. But definitely the Chargers or Chiefs would have a tax on it, for sure.
You guys trade him, what, a second-round pick, right? Was it a second? Was there anything else? Second and a fourth, maybe?
It was second in a mid-round, like a fourth or fifth or something.
So let's say the Jets are willing to offer a first-round pick, which would be the 10th pick in the draft, I'm pretty sure the Jets have. So that's a pretty prime real estate pick. Like, I don't know what can the Chiefs do to top it, because the Chiefs bare minimum are going to be picking late 20s or in the 30s.
Yeah, that's the problem. You're not going to get a mid first or something. It's going to be late first every time unless something crazy happens.
Now, what happens if it happens this way? The Jets offer you the Jets offer Adams a second round pick, right? The Raiders a second round pick and then some. Like, they basically give the same deal that the Packers did. Kansas City calls you up. They said, we'll give you a first and a 3, though. Would you do a first and a 3, or is it not that big of a difference where you just go, okay, I'd rather see him with the Jets?
I'd probably rather see him with the Jets. It's just tough when it's in division like that.
I think it's too. I think you're right. I think it's tough, and I don't know if there's going to be a deal that is going to overstep everybody else when it comes to getting Davante Adams to the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think the Chiefs still have a window, but they got to find their next explosive player, whether you still believe in Kelsey or not long term. His career, I know he says that he's not close to retiring. It's one thing to say it. I don't know if Kelsey's playing 3 more years. So you got to find someone to eventually replace that explosive production on the offensive side of the ball. And then finally, let me just circle back on what I said to Horvath about Sirianni. I'm running the team. I'm getting rid of Sirianni. He loses this game. Especially when you have guys like Belichick, Pete Carroll available, Jim Harbaugh, Mike Vrabel too. Those 4 guys are 4 tremendous names to have on the market. And Sirianni is a good coach, but he's also a doormat. And this year, they were 10-1. I had a friend that had a ticket of 11.5. He took the under. The under on the Eagles. He hit. Because they only had 11. They only had 1 win down the stretch. He thought the ticket was toast. Thankfully, it was online. If it was old school and it was an actual ticket, he would have ripped up the thing. And he would have been able to cash it. But this has got so ugly so quickly. I've never turned on a coach quicker than I have with Nick Sirianni, just because of the way that it played out. But ultimately, I think Howie Roseman, and Jeffrey Lurie, the team owner, this is by design. They like a coach that they can control. And the moment Doug Peterson had a little pushback and said, guys, I want a Super Bowl. I'm the only coach in the history of this franchise to win a Super Bowl. They said, Doug, you're out. Goodbye. Gone. So I don't think Sirianni is going to oppose enough of what Roseman and what Lurie want to do this offseason. So he probably will be back. But like I look at this, you put on an Eagles cap. He loses this game to Tampa Bay, which I think has a good chance of happening. And you see how ugly this has got down the stretch. You got to think about Belichick. You got to think about Harbaugh. You got to think about Carroll. You got to think about Mike Vrabel. Because I do think all 4 of those guys are better options than Nick Sirianni. All righty, fun, busy week from Carroll to Saban to Belichick to Jerod Mayo, Kalen DeBoer, and oh so much more. Do appreciate you listening in to us right here on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. We'll be back on Monday to recap all the super football that we're going to see on Wild Card Weekend. Who knows what else is going to break loose? Big thanks to Moist Mike, Michael Samter, Stuart Kovacs, each and every one of you for calling, listening, and tweeting throughout the week. Follow me on social media to interact over the weekend. Twitter and Instagram at Zach Gelb, ZACHGELB. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Enjoy the football. We out. Bye-bye. Peace.